अधूरी भाषा है, अधूरी भाषा है।
अमित,
Yes.
we are getting messages कि अगर bilingual है तो आप translate करिए, तो वो थोड़ा मुश्किल होगा अगर आप if we can explain to people that but there is a next time maybe Amit, we should see if there is a translation function in Zoom itself that we can use. Okay,
Sure.
so then we can do that. Otherwise, as there are a number of people I think who can't understand Hindi, I will try my best. मैं हिंदी अंग्रेजी में दोनों में कर दूंगी, और जहाँ कुछ हिंदी की बहुत ऐसी वो है, मैं समझा भी दूंगी. I will try now. So Kanya,
Ma'am, we can start now.
I think we give it a few more minutes. 1 or 2 more speakers are joining.
Okay.
Because the वैसे तो first we have Amit, so we have some time, ठीक है, and then we have the book release. Welcome everybody. बहुत धन्यवाद कि आप लोग सब आए हमारे इस webinar में. So it's good to see everybody at this webinar in the new year. This is CSC's first webinar. We to release our new report. It's a report that I'm very excited about, and let me explain why. We all are very strong believers that organic, natural, non-chemical farming is the way to go. And the reason we believe this is that we believe that we need agriculture which is resilient, which is good for livelihoods, which is good for the environment, and which is good for nutrition. So it's a combination of these three that we look forward to in what we call today non-chemical agriculture. But we have also, and if you remember, CSC had published a report some time ago, about a year ago, in which we had essentially shown that in spite of all the talk of non-chemical agriculture, and I'm using the word non-chemical because it is broad enough to take into account all the different aspects, natural or organic. So I'm using it very deliberately. We had shown that in spite of all the hype and the talk and the interest and the enthusiasm for non-chemical agriculture, it was not taking off at the scale and the pace that is needed. And that the area under this agriculture is still very small. Now, one of the barriers that we found when we were looking at this was that we believe that there is not enough buy-in for the idea of non-chemical agriculture, because there is still a lot of resistance from what you would call the formal agricultural science in the idea that this form of agriculture can be productive, good for livelihood, and sustainable. And this is why Amit, Abhay, and Abdul and the full team worked on this report, where we were trying to put together what is the scientific evidence of the validity of the idea of non-chemical agriculture. So the idea was just to put together what is the science. Now, this is what, as Amit will explain, when we worked on this, we found that there is a very important piece of work done by a government institution under ICAR, which has done extraordinary work to be able to put together that scientific evidence. And our effort has been to be able to understand it, to be able to digest it, and to be able to put it forward. And so I think it is a very important piece of work that we have done. And I hope that you will all agree. And I'm really grateful for the whole community of farmers, practitioners, scientists who have agreed to come together and to release this report as a mark of solidarity, as a mark to show that we are all in it together, and that we will make sure that this movement moves from being an idea to a practice. And that is really what we are working towards, all of us. So the program for today is that I will ask now my colleague Amit Khurana to give us an overview of the report. We will then have a joint release of the report and by the entire group of community leaders who are here. And then I will call upon each one of you to give your remarks. I have 15 people, so I would be grateful if everybody could stick to 3 to 5 minutes, and so that I can actually conduct this and we don't overrun on our time. But I think everyone is looking forward to this very much. We already have 185 people who have joined us, and we know that there is huge interest in the work that we have all done together. So thank you again for joining us. And Amit, we all look forward to your presentation on the report, on the new report.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sunita ji. I'll just share the presentation. Is it visible? Yeah.
Yes, but can you make it full screen, Amit?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Sabhi ko namaste. So I will quickly start talking about the report, and we have actually named it as Evidence on Holistic Benefits of Organic and Natural Farming in India. And this overall evidence is for the duration of 2004 to 2020, which is about 16 years. Now, why this report? Sunita ji has just she has just elaborated just few bits from the report. Essentially, we all know agroecological movement started getting some momentum after the negative impacts of Green Revolution were quite evident. First policy on organic farming in India came in 2005, but a subsequent action was half-hearted. The flagship program called Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana started in 2015 and 16, but we know that there are implementation challenges and the scale is limited. We also know that barring few exceptions, action at the state level has been suboptimal. And this essentially explains why only 2.7% of the total net sown area that we have in India is so far covered under organic and natural farming as part of different policies. And this includes 0.41 million hectares of natural farming. Now, one main reason of this half-hearted effort is actually the lack of conviction among policymakers, which is largely due to the limited consensus among the scientific community in favor of organic and natural farming. That's one. And then, of course, the singular view of yield to assess these non-chemical agriculture practices. And both of these have been essentially attributed to limited evidence, which we think was building up over the last 2 decades, but somehow failed to catch the attention of policymakers. And we all know that, yes, in a recent shift, the government has been talking publicly in favor of organic and natural farming. The Prime Minister also highlighted about ill effects of chemical-based farming and appealed to make natural farming a mass movement in the country. But clearly, yesterday's budget speech still suggests no big move. So now let's understand what was the approach that we used in this report to collect, analyze, and present the evidence. There are 2 broad sets of sources, information sources that we have used. One is the All India Network Project on Organic Farming. And this is led by Indian Institute of Farming Systems Research, Modipuram, and it's of course part of an ICR network institutes. And this project actually started in 2004-05, initially at 13 centers in 12 states. And right now it is ongoing at 20 centers in 16 states in 5 ecosystems. These are arid, semi-arid, humid, subhumid, and coastal. And the results that we have used in this report are essentially from 74 cropping systems from 19 centers for the duration of 2004 to 19. The results typically are presented as 6 methods or management practices, which could be clubbed as 3 approaches. And we know that under the organic approach, there's this organic farming method, and then there's organic innovative method. Under the integrated approach, there is this integrated method, which 75% of organic plus 25% of inorganic nutrients and management. And then there's an integrated IN50 method, which is 50-50 of organic as well as inorganic nutrients and management. Then there is a completely inorganic approach, which is further divided into two, which is called inorganic method, which is 100% inorganic nutrients, and then a state recommended method. So this is the way the results were presented as part of the All India Network project. And we have using that clubbed them as three approaches, which the network project calls them as management practices. The other important set of sources is the scientific studies conducted during this tenure, essentially published between 2010 and 20 by a wide set of stakeholders, and these were 89 unique scientific studies that we used, and these were both on organic as well as natural farming. Just a very short glimpse of the centers and the ecosystems where the network project is conducted. It clearly tells us that it is quite a pan-India representation, 20 states and 5 ecosystems. Now, this is just to give a sense on how we have approached the analysis. So essentially, what we did was we tried a couple of different ways, use them in different permutation combination in different chapters. One part of analysis was on mean values from 2014-19, and this was essentially was done for methods as well as approaches, and develop a good comparison in terms of which scores better versus the other. We also tried to figure out and did some analysis on where the values are significantly higher, for example, with reference to inorganic method or inorganic approach. And we decided that significantly higher would be something which is more than 20%. And then we did another part of the analysis was based on actual values. This was done for 5 years actual values as well as single year in some cases, essentially to know where the values were highest in terms of crops, in terms of cropping systems, like that. The third part of the analysis was trying to understand the long-term trends, and this was starting 2004 to 19. And because the centers had increased, because it was earlier till about 2013-14, there were 3 approaches, and the other 3 were added starting 2014-15. So we captured all that in the graphs, which I'll show you in the next slide. But by and large, this was just to get a sense on what are the long-term trends, because our deep dive analysis was focused on the last 5 years. Okay, so this is just a snapshot how we have done it in the report. You can see, this is just a snapshot of a table which is talking about the yield and comparing the yield of different methods and mean yields of different methods and approaches. You can see on the left side, we have talked about what crops, and this is about spices actually. What are the cropping systems and where they were grown, which centers, what were the ecosystems, and then what was the mean yield, let's say, of a particular method. And we compared that with five other methods, and then again mean yield of an approach, and compared that to the 2 other approaches. And that's how we approached it. The green marks, the green blocks you can see reflect where the yields were higher than a particular method or approach. The text in bold reflects where it was highest within a particular cropping system or a crop. So we did the analysis that we did is actually presented in this way in the report. This was just to give you a snapshot. Another way how it was presented is the graphs that you see on the left side is basically giving a sense on where the mean yields were higher and which amongst those were significantly higher. You can see the change in the color within a particular bar. And this is essentially about organic carbon and available nitrogen, phosphorus. This basically gives a sense on the mean values compared to which were higher or significantly higher with organic or integrated approach compared to inorganic approach. Then the long-term trends are presented as graphs, as you can see in extras. There are about 170 odd graphs that we have used to explain the long-term trends. And you can see this is about net returns of a particular center. you can see the legend. The green line tells about organic approach, the blue line tells about organic innovative, so on and so forth. So that's how we have tried to approach this, to give a sense on the short-term in-depth analysis, let's say, of 5 years, and then a longer version, long-term analysis of the last 16 years. This is about the other set of source, which is 89 studies, and we basically clubbed and analyzed and segregated these 90 odd studies in these 4 chapters under the following headings. For example, in crop yield, we have talked about, okay, which are the studies which were talking about higher yield with organic and natural farming? Which are the studies which were giving a sense on transition time to attain comparable yield? Like that. That's how we approached it. So let's come to the findings now. Essentially, the evidence that we ultimately could consolidate, and which, so the first one was on the crop yield. Just to give you a sense, the information was available on cropping systems and seasons, and from there on, we had to understand which crops, which data is for what crop. So we selected about 31 crops, which fairly represented 5 main food groups. And these are essentially the data that we see in the next slide, essentially would reflect these vegetables and these oil seeds, these many pulses and spices and cereals. So essentially, this was about 74 cropping systems, 19 centers, 5 ecosystems, 3 seasons. That's the summary of the crop yield. You can see this is summary based on the network project results. On the left side, you can see the food groups and the number of recorded results. The second column, you can see this is the instances where yields are highest with each of the 3 farming approaches. This is given in percentage and is based on actual values. The third column you see is about the percentage of times where organic or integrated approach, the mean value of that was higher than the inorganic approach. And the third is about where it was significantly higher. The last column is about the range. But just to give you a sense, you can see the bold text. You can see in vegetables, just out of the 122 recorded results, in 48% of those, the yields were highest with organic approach, as compared to 36% with integrated approach, and as compared to 16% with inorganic approach. So that's how one can interpret these results. I'm sure people will get more time to see the results in the report to be able to better understand it. But let me just quickly move to the key highlights from the yield. So this is about overall crops, that out of the 504 times that yield results were recorded in the last 15, 16 years, 41% of the times yields were highest with organic approach, followed by 33% with integrated approach and 26% with inorganic approach. And when we tried to compare the 5-year mean yields, in 87% of the cases, yields with organic approach were higher than inorganic approach as part of one or more cropping system. And even the long-term trends were very much favorable towards organic approach. And clearly they were better than inorganic. And with integrated, they were at par based on different crops or different food groups. That's the set of key highlights that we have gathered from the scientific studies on the yield part. You can see clearly.
Amit,
yes.
you will have to move a little faster, so don't get into so much detail.
Sure.
Because I have we have many people to speak as well. So maybe.
Yeah, okay. So here we can see that essentially we are saying there are a lot of examples, lot of studies which tell that yields can be higher by organic farming as well as natural farming. And yes, of course, there is yields improve over time. And yes, it's in certain crops, it takes time to actually reach to a comparable or a higher yield. That's the evidence on cost, income, and livelihood. Essentially, 4 aspects we covered: cost of cultivation, gross returns, net returns, and benefits cost ratio. Again, you can relate to our earlier part of the discussion. It's the same table, just giving a sense on how each of these fared. But let me give you the key highlights here. So net returns is something that you would like to focus upon here. And we could see that in 64% of the cases, net returns were highest with organic approach. as compared to 11% with integrated or 25% with inorganic. When we talked about 5-year mean net returns, in 67% cases, they were higher than inorganic. 67% of cropping systems. One important part here is that despite high cost of cultivation, which actually we saw in about 81% of cropping systems, and that we understand was largely due to the fact that the purchase of on-farm inputs, on-farm organic inputs was done for these experimental farms. The net returns were were highest in 63% of the cropping systems. So that's about the yield part. The scientific studies also talked about similar observations, but yes, here the slight difference was that because these were not really experimental farms, and quite a lot of these were actually from the practitioners, let's say, there were studies which said that even the cost was much lower in natural as well as organic farming, which we did not see in the network project results. But by and large, you can see the summary here. It is not only about cost, but it also talks about how it helped the organic farming, how it helps sustain livelihood of marginal farmers. It also talks about the potential to provide year-long sustained food production for consumption and sale. So there were studies covering about different aspects, both for organic and natural farming. Let me move to soil health and environment now. That's a third part, very important part as part of the overall holistic evidence that we collected. The first set of studies is about the first set of results is about organic carbon and then macronutrients, NPK. Essentially, we can clearly see the bold numbers. You can see organic carbon is highest as well as is higher than inorganic, and then is significantly higher, much more than integrated. Similar results for nitrogen, similar results for phosphorus and potassium. Let me move to the key highlights. Essentially, by and large, organic carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, they were better with organic than with integrated and inorganic approaches both. That's the broad summary of it. And just to give you a sense, in 91% of cropping systems, organic was highest. It was highest. And then the mean values were also higher than inorganic in 97%. Long-term trends were also very much favorable. In about 42% of cases, cropping systems, we could see that the mean value was higher for all nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium collectively. Now, similar figures for individual nutrients, which I will right now skip. Let me move to the other part, which is about bulk density and rhizosphere microbial population. Similar trends, very favorable towards organic, and also organic better than integrated, inorganic, but certainly in many cases better than integrated also. The key highlights here are, again, the bulk density was lowest, and yes, the low bulk density is considered good. So it was lowest in 52% of the cropping systems. Same results for the mean values, and similar results for collectively for bacteria, fungi, and other rhizosphere microbes. Let me move to the third, the other part, last part of it, which is about micronutrients. Again, very positive trends. You can see the figures, and even the studies, scientific studies, were very promising and about how they can help the entire issue of nutrients, soil health, soil fertility, aeration, soil respiration, microbial biomass, and of course both with organic as well as natural farming. And in particular, there were studies about carbon pools, carbon sequestration benefits with reference to natural farming. Also, something that we figured out on the nutrients and the quality part, again, the similar results, much more in favor of organic. But yes, in this case, the results were also equally good for integrated also. But still, in 12 out of 15 crops, we could see that the parameters, 28 different food quality parameters, they were highest with organic approach. Now, what's the conclusion then? So clearly, to us, it was very clear that this consolidated holistic evidence is in favor of organic and natural farming over chemical dependent inorganic farming. Organic and natural farming approaches are not only profitable and sustainable, but also productive. And that is very important to note here, that they are also productive. It is also evident that organic approach fared better than integrated approach on profitability and sustainability, and is almost at par in the case of productivity. And yes, the strength of this evidence is very high. That's what we believe. It covers multiple aspects. both organic and natural farming, multiple dimensions within each, so on and so forth. But one very important thing is that this one major part of evidence, which is the network project results, they actually failed to receive the attention that it deserved by the policymakers and the larger scientific community at the center as well as in states, because there's such a promising set of results that we have in front of us. So that was very much surprising. Now, what is the way ahead then? So clearly what we are recommending is, yes, it is critical now that this evidence is consolidated. This consolidated evidence is well recognized, well accepted by the larger scientific community, which of course can play a big role in spreading awareness, building capacity, influencing policymakers. It is also important that this holistic evidence is now considered why, instead of just focusing on the yield, which is something I have been talking about. And yes, all ongoing and future action has to be aligned by this and informed by this strong evidence that we see is now there in front of us. And then, yes, we need a roadmap that sets a long-term agenda for the adoption of agroecological approaches across different parts of the country, because there are multiple reasons now to actually adopt organic and natural farming, as we have been saying. And once the evidence is now there and it is right there in front of everyone, it is very clear that the focus now has to be supporting farmers during the transition. It could be technical support, and it has to be financial support, and that includes ensuring the quality and cost-effective organic and bio inputs. And there are many more which we have mentioned in the report. The other part of this is, yes, we now need a very, very targeted, ambitious, well-funded nationwide program, which is developed to drive the change toward this. And this also has to take care of the fact that we need to have a vibrant market. We need to address the existing barriers, and that ambitious program has to factor these things into it. Bio inputs, very important. We need to promote these, and this includes, of course, low cost, but quality inputs. But this also is about city compost, as well as locally produced organic inputs. Agriculture extension system needs to be enabled to support this transition, because they are the ones who would have the largest reach. The last mile connectivity perhaps is something that depends on how well they understand this and how well they are equipped to transfer the knowledge. And the certification process, of course, should be improved to make it farmer friendly and low cost. And most importantly, states have to now come up with a much more concerted and stronger and aggressive action, because a lot of this is about local realities and the local situations. So states will have to step up their work. With that, I conclude. Thank you very much, Sunita ji. I hope I was not too much far behind, too much ahead of the time.
No, Amit, you have stuck to time. So thank you very much. Really grateful. And it's a very tough job that you have taken on to explain as simply as possible this very huge amount of data on the evidence behind organic and natural farming. And I think it is important that we have been able to put this out. Obviously, it still requires a lot more work with the community to make sure that it is disseminated, understood, and used. But before I move ahead, let's have the formal release of the report. So can we have the report released?
Yes.
And,
yes, Abhay is sharing the...
Yeah. So what we will do is to put the cover on top, and that will be a formal release of the report.
Abhay, we can't see.
Abhay, the cover is not up.
Is the teaser.
Can you see it now?
No.
No.
Maybe you can try the PDF.
Okay. I'll try.
Yeah, perfect. So congratulations, everyone. Can you keep it on?
Okay.
So congratulations, everyone. This is the formal release of the report. on evidence on holistic, and I think we've underlined, as Amit has very clearly said, it's about holistic benefits and not single benefits. And I think that's the richness of organic and natural farming, non-chemical farming, as I've called it. So thank you. We can take this down, and then if I can have all the faces of the entire community together, and we can take a snapshot of that and put that together. So can everybody put on their cameras? I'd be grateful. Tyagi ji, Panwar ji, का काम है जो हमने present किया है. So Kanya, if you can put on yours as well, and Chuparno, otherwise your faces don't show. It shows up as blank. Wonderful. So thank you, everyone. This is a great moment. The entire community coming together to release this report and standing behind the fact that we already knew that the evidence would show up, that this is a form of farming which is sustainable, productive, good for livelihoods, good for environment, good for nutrition. But so thank you very much for this. Thank you. Good. Okay, I will now move to the next part of the program and call upon each person to give their comments. And as I said, I have 15 people. So please, and there's somebody at the end of the queue. So जो अंत में आता है उसको भी समय मिलना चाहिए. So if we can make sure that we can keep our comments brief, but very important comments. So Panwar ji, मैं आपसे शुरू करूंगी. So Mr. Azad Singh Panwar, Director of the ICR, Indian Institute of Farming Systems Research in Uttar Pradesh. And as you will see from Amit's presentation, the work that has been done by his center has played a big role in the analysis that we have put forward to you. Panwar ji?
Ma'am, just one thing. I mean, Dr. Parmar could not join. So
Okay.
he's joined by the person who has been leading this entire NPOP project, Dr. N. Ravi Shankar.
अच्छा, sorry. Ravi Shankar ji, आप अगर मैंने आपका वो आप पनवर जी के नाम पे आपका वो लेबल था, मगर thank you for joining us, and please go ahead.
Good evening to all. Thank you, madam. Actually, our director, Dr. A.S. Pawar, he could not join due to some urgent other meetings. And since that link was given to him, and then that same link was forwarded to me.
No problem. Please
so
go
the
ahead.
name I have not changed. That's why I have not changed. So first of all, I would like to congratulate CSC for bringing out this report, very important report, which can support for the sustainable agricultural practices promotion in the country. As highlighted in the report, we have started working on this organic farming from the year 2004 onwards, and most last 15-16 years. We have done a lot of work, lot of scientific efforts have been put into this, generating this data across the different ecologies, regions, covering the various crops. And based on this report, we have provided a lot of inputs to the government, central government especially, and also the many state governments. And based on that only, if you see, there are two schemes which are in operation, like Mission Organic Value Chain Development for Northeastern region, and also the Parambaragat Krishi Vikas Yojana. For designing those schemes, the inputs from this scheme was utilized. Further, the another 2-3 schemes which are in process of finalization, like JKPY, Jaivik Kheti Pratyoshan Yojana, and also the Modern Organic Agriculture Development Initiative, especially for the Ladakh, and also a large area certification program, especially for those areas where none of the chemical is used till date, like islands and tribal areas, all those areas. So we have been continuously providing the inputs for designing of such schemes at the central as well as at the state level. And it is not that in one point it was highlighted that the scheme, although a lot of data is generated, but it failed to attract the policymakers. It is not so. I would like to just clarify. We have been providing continuously this one. And it is not only the organic farming. How we approach is that we have given two kind of approaches. One is the complete organic approach, wherein immediately the farmers can switch over to the organic farming without the yield loss. The second approach is that in some of the high productive areas, if without any proper planning or without any proper scientific approach, if those crops or the lands are converted into the organic farming, there is a significant yield reduction which we have observed in the initial years. That is called as the transition period, and this one. And in those areas, we have adopted the towards organic approach. That means gradual reduction of the synthetics in fertilizers or the pesticides. Even in this towards organic approach also, we have employed two kind of approaches in the research methodologies. One is the fixed reduction and another one is the flexible reduction of the synthetics. So this kind of different approaches were employed throughout the country in different ecologies or different crops and then the different regions. Certainly, many of the crops, as highlighted in the report, many of the crops respond very well. And I would also like to inform all of you that we have three different seasons. Okay, these Kharif and summer season crops, they respond very well to the organic input management, while the Rabi crops are having the limitations. It requires a long-term, a careful and scientific driven management, especially for the Rabi crops, because many of the Rabi crops are grown under the low soil temperature condition, wherein the microbial activity gets limited during the Rabi season, especially due to the low temperature, and the nutrient release from the soil is not matching with that of the crops. So the Rabi crops, we need to have a careful approach and careful management with respect to the organic farming. But otherwise, most of the Kharif crops and also the summer crops, if someone follows this scientific approach of application of the nutrients, management, all those things, it can be very easily, we can get the comparable yield. Then coming to the natural farming, the report is about the organic and natural farming. And whatever the work which we have done during the last 15-16 years it is on the organic farming only. Natural farming work we have just initiated from the Kharif 2020 in the 8 major cropping systems. The experiments are in progress. So initially we have tested the only application of the concoctions of this natural farming, like Jeevamrit or Bijamrit and the Ganajeevamrit. So the application of concoctions alone reduces the yield significantly. Now, after learning the experience or learning from that particular small pilot study, we have initiated a large scale natural farming study covering all these 20 NPOIF centers. From Kharif 2020, we are covering 8 major cropping systems, wherein we are comparing this organic farming, integrated crop management, along with the complete natural farming. Complete natural farming, it comprises of 4 pillars. Already many of you must be aware.
Raviji, I'm going to have to interrupt you. You have fascinating information, but I have a number of speakers.
Yeah. I'm just concluding,
yes.
Madam. I'm just concluding. Thank you very much. So we have initiated this particular comparative evaluation of these 3 things. And hope it will take some more time to get a stabilized results. So with this, I congratulate once again CSE for bringing out this report, and also thank you very much.
No, and thank you, Raviji. The work that you're doing is very important, and we will continue to follow the work and bring it out. Bharat Bhushan ji, अगर मैं आपसे अब निवेदन करूं, Bharat Bhushan ji.
जी, आदरणीय सुनीता जी को और पूरी सीएससी की टीम को साधुवाद और मेरे जितना भी साथी देख रहे हैं सभी को नमस्कार। बहुत छोटे से मैं कहूं तो 3 चीजों को बड़ा ध्यान रखना है। एक तो जब भी हम ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग की बात कर रहे हैं, नेचर में उसका एविडेंस क्या है, मतलब उसका एग्जिस्टेंस क्या है, उसका साइंटिफिकल अप्रोच क्या है, और वो किसानों के स्तर पर किस तरीके से प्रैक्टिसेबल है। यदि इन तीनों बातों को हम साथ रखते हैं तो एक अच्छी रिपोर्ट बनती है। इस स्तर पर कोई भी विरोधाभास पूरे देश में बनने की जरूरत नहीं है। यहां मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा कि सबसे पहला नियम है कि भूमि की उर्वरता को हम कैसे देखें कि वो समृद्ध होती है। तो भूमि की उर्वरता का नियम है कि मिट्टी, पानी और बीज का जो कोएग्जिस्टेंस है, इसी के द्वारा जमीन की माइक्रोबायोलॉजी सस्टेन होती है, कार्बन फिक्सिंग होता है, और जिस तरीके से मौसम बदलते हैं उसके साथ साथ जमीन की फिजिकल और केमिकल प्रॉपर्टी सस्टेन होती जाती है। ये प्रकृति का नियम है, ये मनुष्य का बनाया हुआ नहीं है। इसको समझने की जरूरत है। यहाँ पर मैं एक निवेदन करूंगा कि सीएससी की टीम इन चीजों पर बहुत ध्यान दे कि जब हम केवल इनपुट और स्किल या किसी प्रैक्टिस के बारे में चर्चा करते हैं तो उसके सिस्टम को अलग रखा जाए, और जब हम किसानों को किस चीज समझाना चाहते हैं, उसका प्रशिक्षण देना चाहते हैं, तो उसका कंटेंट क्या होगा, उसकी डेफिनेशन क्या होगी, उसको डिलीवर करने का तरीका क्या होगा, इन दोनों चीजों को अलग अलग रखा जाए। क्योंकि पूरे देश में अभी ट्रेनिंग के नाम पर अलग अलग तरीकों को लेकर काफी विरोधाभास है। जैविक खेती को अलग ढंग से देख रहे हैं, प्राकृतिक खेती को अलग ढंग से देख रहे हैं, जबकि ऐसा है नहीं। नेचर का सिस्टम यदि हम देखते हैं तो नियम, नियंत्रण, संतुलन नेचर के सिस्टम में बनाया है, वो मनुष्य का बना हुआ नहीं है। हम वहां पर डाइवर्सिफिकेशन को देखते हैं, वहां हम प्रोडक्शन डेंसिटी को देखते हैं, वहां पर हम इकोलॉजिकल सिस्टम को देखते हैं। तो ये जो सिस्टम नेचर के अपने हैं, यही खेती की मूलभूत जरूरत है। इसलिए मेरा निवेदन है कि खेती में निवेश की पूंजी समझदारी और श्रम है, इनपुट कम है। हम इनपुट बेस्ड ऑर्गेनिक एग्रीकल्चर की या इनपुट बेस्ड नेचुरल फार्मिंग की बात कर रहे हैं, जहां पर कोई डायनामिक सोर्स की भी बात करेंगे, कोई कॉस्मिक फॉर्म की बात करेंगे, कोई गाय का जिक्र ज्यादा करेंगे। लेकिन मेरा निवेदन ये है कि ये सारी चीजें नेचर में काम करती हैं, लेकिन इससे ज्यादा जरूरत है कि हम एनवायरमेंट को ध्यान में रखते हुए, हेल्थ को ध्यान में रखते हुए, किसानों की इकोनॉमी को ध्यान में रखते हुए यदि बात करेंगे तो वो बात साइंटिफिक भी होगी, एग्जिस्टेंशियल भी होगी और प्रैक्टिसेबल भी होगी। यहां मैं एक और भी कहूंगा कि देश के सामने एक बड़ा सवाल आता है कि बढ़ती हुई जनसंख्या को हम ऑर्गेनिक सिस्टम से क्या खाना खिला पाएंगे। तो मैं इन वैज्ञानिकों को भी एक निवेदन करूंगा कि जब हम खेत एक फसल अनेक डाइवर्सिफाई क्रॉप पैटर्न लागू करते हैं तो मल्टी लेयर प्रोडक्शन मल्टी क्रॉपिंग पैटर्न में लागू हो जाता है। इससे जमीन का कार्बन तो बढ़ता ही है, माइक्रोबायोलॉजी भी बढ़ती है। ध्यान देना यह है कि हमको बीज के नियम को बारीकी से समझना है। यदि बीज का नियम नहीं समझा गया तो पूरी बड़ी दुर्दशा का कारण हमारे बीज हैं। तो बीजों का नैसर्गिक संरक्षण इसके महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दा आता है। इन्हीं चीजों को ध्यान में रखते हुए यदि हम इकोनॉमी की बात करते हैं तो प्रोडक्शन मैनेजमेंट, प्रोसेसिंग, सर्टिफिकेशन और उसका ब्रांडिंग, पैकेजिंग करते हुए मार्केटिंग करने की एक इंटीग्रेटेड अप्रोच ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग की किसानों तक कैसे पहुंचे, इस पर देश को ध्यान देने की जरूरत है। अभी हम विगत 20 वर्षों में केवल इनपुट बेस्ड ऑर्गेनिक एग्रीकल्चर की बात कर रहे हैं। मेरा निवेदन है कि ये इनपुट बेस्ड नहीं है, ये इंटीग्रेटेड प्रोजेक्ट है, जिसको एक सही तरीके से प्रोडक्शन मैनेजमेंट अकॉर्डिंग टू मार्केटिंग, अकॉर्डिंग टू सप्लाई चेन, अकॉर्डिंग टू पोषण, तो स्वास्थ्य की दृष्टि से, पर्यावरण की दृष्टि से, आर्थिक संतुलन की दृष्टि से उत्पादन हमें क्या करना है, उत्पादन का प्राकृतिक नियम क्या है, और उस प्रकार से उसकी बहुत बात छोटी इनपुट की जरूरत पड़ेगी, उनको हमको ध्यान देना है। तो इन चीजों को यदि हम एक क्लस्टर अप्रोच में लाते हैं, फार्मर प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के फ्रेमवर्क में लाते हैं, तो किसानों की आमदनी बढ़ना कोई बड़ा मुद्दा नहीं है। उनकी 4 to 10 टाइम आमदनी बढ़ सकती है यदि हम इसको एक इंटीग्रेटेड अप्रोच में लेके चलते हैं। इसके लिए मैं सुनीता जी से कहूंगा कि इसके लिए 3 चीजों पर ध्यान दिया जाए। राष्ट्र के स्तर पर नीति हो, जहां पर हम कृषि का अनुसंधान, शोध, शिक्षा और नीतिगत स्तर पर हम ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग के कंटेंट को बिल्कुल स्पष्ट कर दें, हम उसकी डेफिनेशन को स्पष्ट कर दें, उसके कैरिकुलम को और कंटेंट को स्पष्ट कर दें। ये बहुत जरूरत का विषय है, ताकि देश में राष्ट्रीय कृषि नीति के आधार पर किसान की भी परिभाषा हो, कृषि की भी परिभाषा हो, और इस सिस्टम को हम बहुत अपडेट करके चलाएं। जिले स्तर पर उसकी कार्य योजना हो और किसानों के स्तर पर उसके कार्यक्रम का एक बहुत बढ़िया स्वरूप हो। हम कभी नामों पर झगड़ते हैं, कभी नाम बदलते हैं, कभी तरीके बदलते हैं, और पूरे देश में 50 साल से हम देख रहे हैं कि कभी नाम बदल कर आगे भाग रहे हैं, कभी कोई तरीका बदल कर आगे भाग रहे हैं। अब देश जिस तरीके से आत्मनिर्भर भारत की संकल्पना के साथ हम हर जगह सस्टेनेबिलिटी देखना चाहते हैं, पूरी देश और दुनिया में ऑर्गेनिक फूड चेन की मांग बढ़ी है। तो इन सभी बातों को ध्यान रखते हुए मेरा सीएससी से निवेदन है कि एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर इनपुट बेस नहीं है। जब हम इनपुट को देखते हैं तो बाजार और बजट की तरफ जाते हैं, लेकिन जब हम एग्जिस्टेंस को देखते हैं तो समझदारी और श्रम की तरफ बढ़ते हैं, और निवेश की पूंजी बदल जाती है। खेती व्यापार से नहीं होगी, व्यवसाय की मानसिकता से होगी, जहां समझदारी और श्रम का नियोजन करते हुए हमको उत्पादन करना है। मैं ज्यादा समय नहीं लूंगा, लेकिन बताना ये चाह रहा हूं कि जो तरीके हैं वो अलग चीज है और जो ज्ञान है अलग चीज है। इस समय हमको ज्ञान, विज्ञान और विवेक तीनों दृष्टियों का समन्वय करके आगे बढ़ने की जरूरत है। मेरे मित्र हरपाल सिंह बार बार इसी बात पर जोर देते हैं वो कि हमको हर जगह हर एक नियम को हमको स्थापित करना है। केवल हमको फिजिकल एविडेंस नहीं देना है, बल्कि एग्जिस्टेंशियल प्रॉपर्टी जो नेचर की उन पर भी ध्यान देना है। मेरी बात आपने सुनी, इनको देश के सामने रखा जाए। मैं सभी को प्रणाम करता हूँ। नमस्कार।
नहीं, बहुत सही, बहुत अच्छा बोले भरत भूषण जी। मैं अभी एक के बाद एक सबको चांस देना चाहती हूँ, तो इसीलिए मैं अपनी बात रोकूंगी। सुभाष शर्मा जी, अगर आप अपनी बात रखें सामने। सुभाष जी,
नमस्कार और सभी को नमस्कार। मैं ऐसे मॉडल की बात करना चाहूंगा जो अभी हमने एक साल में ही ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग में उसको बुलंदियों पे ले गए हैं। ऐसे मॉडल की बात करना चाहूंगा जो हमने किया है। मेरे मॉडल की बात करूं तो मैं अपने खेत का ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन मैंने 2 के ऊपर चले गया है। वाटर कंजर्वेशन 100% होता है, इकोलॉजी इतनी हो गई है बढ़िया वहाँ की। लेकिन इसी ज्ञान को 30 साल के नॉलेज को हमने एक नए फॉर्म पे इम्प्लीमेंट किया। जहाँ का ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन 0.4 था, जहाँ पानी की उपलब्धि नहीं थी, ऐसे जगह तो हमने उसकी एक डिजाइन बनाई। तो डिजाइन बनाने में हमने पूरे अपने ज्ञान को, योजकता को और श्रम को झोंक दिया। वहां पे क्रॉप से मिट्टी, पानी और पर्यावरण, ये 3 मुद्दे रखे हमने खास कि ये फॉर्म की मिट्टी जिसका ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन 0.4 है उसको हम बुलंदियों पे ले जाए, जिसका पानी, जहाँ पानी नहीं है इरिगेशन के लिए वहां पे पानी पैदा कर दे, और जहाँ पर्यावरण नहीं है वहां पे बहुत अच्छा पर्यावरण हम तैयार कर दें, तो हम हमारी जो समस्या आने वाली है उससे निजात पाएंगे। तो मिट्टी का जो ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन है उसके बढ़ाने की दिशा में हमने जो काम किया, पहला काम किया हमने मिट्टी के ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन को डेवलप करना है। तो हमने उसकी डिजाइन ऐसी की कि पूरे खेत में ऐसे क्रॉप लिए जाए कि उसके बीच में ग्रीन मैन्योर हो। तो उसके लिए हमने क्या किया, तुअर में ग्रीन मैन्योर लेके करीब 26 एकड़ में हमने पूरा वही प्लानिंग किया कि तुअर में सिर्फ ग्रीन मैन्योर होगा। हमने गन्ने की पैदावार 0.4 ऑर्गेनिक में लिया है, अभी देखने लायक है। वो गन्ने ने वाटर कंजर्वेशन किया है, वो गन्ने ने सॉइल फर्टिलिटी बढ़ाई है, वो गन्ने ने इकोलॉजी बनाई है। यानी तीनों एक क्रॉप से हम अगर तीनों प्राप्त करते हैं तो हमारी बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि होती है। तो हम लोगों ने लास्ट फरवरी से ये सब काम चालू किया। अभी वो गन्ना देखने लायक बनता है, उसका उपज जब निकलेगा तब उसका मैं डेटा दूंगा कि इसमें से पर एकड़ कितना मिला। लेकिन पानी 100% वहां का हमने रोक दिया। हमको सूर्य प्रकाश, पानी और हवा से वो गन्ने की पैदावार बढ़ानी थी, लेकिन बाकी के इनपुट भी डालने थे। तो मिट्टी को फर्टाइल करने के लिए हमने गोबर की खाद को वैल्यू एडेड किया, वैल्यू एडेड करके उसको वो सप्लाई की। तो इनिशियल हमको खर्च करना पड़ा वहां पे, तब हम उसको सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर की ओर ले जा रहे हैं जो हजारों साल के लिए सस्टेनेबल होगा। तो इनिशियल अगर हम वो खर्च नहीं कर पाते तो हम बहुत स्लो होते, हमें उसमें तीव्र गति से आगे बढ़ना था, इसलिए इनिशियल खर्चा किया। क्या किया हमने, गोबर खाद के ऊपर खर्चा किया, हमने ग्रीन मैन्योर का बीज लाने के लिए बीजों पे खर्चा किया। तो हमने तुअर के साथ इसको लगाया, गन्ने के साथ इसको लगाया, भविष्य की प्लानिंग की कि मुझे गेहूं लगाना है तो नहीं, मुझे पहले ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन डेवलप करना पड़ेगा। तो वो ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन डेवलप करने के लिए मैंने गेहूं की जगह पे मैंने पहले पूरा ग्रीन मैन्योर लिया, और अब इस पे तो गेहूं आज बहुत शानदार है वो गेहूं, क्योंकि पहले मैंने वहां पे पूरा ग्रीन मैन्योर डाला, अलौकिक खाद डाला, गोबर की खाद डाली, और कुछ हम लिक्विड फर्टिलाइजर बनाते हैं वो उससे। तो ये 3 मुद्दे से उसकी डिजाइन बनाई क्रॉप की। तो हमने क्या किया, जैसे अभी वो पूरा 66 एकड़ का मॉडल है, तो 14 एकड़ में पूरा हॉर्टिकल्चर बना कि मुझे कल जो क्लाइमेट चेंज है उसका सॉल्यूशन भी यहाँ से ही पैदा करना है, यहाँ से ही निकालना है उसका सॉल्यूशन। तो उसके लिए हमने 14 एकड़ का हॉर्टिकल्चर, उसको 3 डिजाइन में उसको भाग दिया। तो 14 एकड़ में उसमें से क्रॉप भी इतने ले रहे, 14 एकड़ में पहले पूरा ग्रीन मैन्योर डाल दिया, उसके बाद में हमने हॉर्टिकल्चर के प्लांट लगाए, फिर उसमें हमने पपाया लगाया, उसका वीडियो मैंने विनीत जी को भेजा है पूरा। तो इस तरह से हमने उसके कई क्रॉप के डिजाइन करके आज वो 8 महीने में ही मुनाफा दे रहा है हमको। यानी वहां पे जो हमने इनिशियल इन्वेस्टमेंट किया वो निकल के, लेकिन उसके प्रॉफिट क्या हुए वो मैं बाद में बताऊंगा। तो हमने गन्ने का प्लानिंग किया 2.5 एकड़, इसलिए किया कि आने वाले कल में इसका सीड मेरा हो। वो इतना गजब का है वो गन्ने का, लेकिन वो गन्ने ने वहां पे पानी को, हमने सोचा कि पानी के सहारे इसकी पैदा, तो बारिश के पानी को पूरा रोक लिया वहां पे, वो रोक के पानी से गन्ने की पैदावार बढ़ाई। अभी तक का सिस्टम ऐसा है कि गन्ना पानी ज्यादा लेता है, अब हम गन्ने से पानी पैदा करते हैं, वो गन्ने से सॉइल फर्टिलिटी पैदा करते हैं, वो गन्ने से हम इकोलॉजी तैयार करते हैं। इस तरह से हमने उसमें ग्रीन मैन्योर लेके सॉइल फर्टिलिटी का भी काम किया, वाटर कंजर्वेशन का भी काम किया। फिर हमने बाद में ये काम किया कि ये सब पूरे क्रॉप लेने की वजह से हमारे यहाँ एक ऐसा बढ़िया सिस्टम बढ़ गया कि अब हम मार्केटिंग की तरफ उनको जाने लगा है कि इमीडिएट मार्केटिंग की तरफ जाना है। इसी वर्ष उसका गुड़ बनेगा तो और वैल्यू एडेड हो जाएगा। तुअर हमने लगाई 26 एकड़ में, तो वो पूरी तुअर की दालें बनेगी, वो दाल बन के वो मार्केटिंग के करेंगे, तो हमारे इनिशियल खर्चे वो आसानी से निकल जाएंगे। लेकिन अब तुअर पे मैंने ग्रीन मैन्योर लिया, मुझे और सॉइल फर्टाइल करना है, क्योंकि मुझे तेजी से इसको सस्टेनेबल करना है एग्रीकल्चर। तो हमने तुअर पे पूरा प्लानिंग किया है कि मेरे यहाँ जो गाय बैल है, तो उसमें कुछ 5% हिस्से में हम चारे की फसल ले और बाकी पूरा मूंग लगा दें, तो फिर मूंग का क्रॉप ये भी सॉइल को फर्टाइल करेगा। इस तरह से हमने वो पूरा उसमें प्लानिंग किया है। तो हॉर्टिकल्चर में, गन्ने में, और फिर बात ये आई कि हमें मसाले की फसलें लेनी है, तो हमको 5 एकड़ लगाना है अगले वर्ष, फिर अदरक भी लगाना है, उससे सूंठ भी बनानी है। तो हमने उसका इनिशियल जो खर्चा है सीड का, आधा एकड़ के हमने पूरे सीड बना लिए। अब उसको वो सीड से हम 5-5 एकड़ लगा पा रहे हैं, तो हम उसके तरफ तेजी से, हमको उसमें अर्थार्जन भी होगा और एक इकोलॉजी भी बनेगी अलग अलग क्रॉप के माध्यम से। तो पूरे फॉर्म में कई प्रकार के लेकिन इसके साथ ही हमने ये सोचा कि अगर हमको यहाँ पे ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन को टिका के रखना है तो इकोलॉजी भी तैयार करनी होगी। तो हर 300 फीट के ऊपर पेड़ों की कतारें लगाई। वो पेड़ों की कतारों में हमने अभी उसमें पपाया लिया है, केले लिए है, तो वो जो पेड़ों की कतारें वो 40-40 फीट पे हमने लगाई। इस तरह से बड़ी संख्या में वहां पे करीब 3,500 पेड़ सेट किए हैं। वो पेड़ पूरे के पूरे जिंदा है, एक भी पेड़ उसमें का डैमेज नहीं हुआ। उसके बीच में हमको पपाया के क्रॉप मिलेंगे, यानी हमारी लागत जो है आने वाले 1 वर्ष में पपाया में हमको मुनाफा भी मिलेगा और पेड़ों को लगाने की लागत भी निकल जाएगी। इस तरह से हमने पेड़ों का भी प्लानिंग किया। अब ये सब प्लानिंग करने की वजह से क्या हुआ, ये पूरी एक तरह से हमने जो पेड़ लगाए, हमने जो ग्रीन मैन्योर लिया, हमने जो गोबर की खाद का इस्तेमाल किया, उसको वैल्यूएडेड करके किया। तो उससे क्या हुआ, जमीन के अंदर एक ही वर्ष में इतने प्रकार के जीव जंतु जीवाणु तैयार हो गए। हम बोलते हैं नाइट्रोजन, हम बोलते हैं फास्फोरस, हम बोलते हैं पोटैश, हम बोलते हैं माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट। इनकी डेड बॉडियों से वो सारा फास्फोरस पर ईयर हमारा बढ़ते रहेगा। उनके डेड बॉडियों से हमको पोटैश अवेलेबल होता रहेगा। हमको उनके जीवाणुओं से नाइट्रोजन भी वातावरण का खींचने की क्षमता उसमें से तैयार होगी। इतना बढ़िया पूरा एक सिस्टम सेटअप हो गया है। अब ये सारा सिस्टम सेटअप करते समय हमने 3 प्रोडक्शन किए। इंपॉर्टेंटली मैं थोड़े से लास्ट में अपनी बात करके
थोड़ा सा लास्ट में
पूरा करता हूँ। हमने 3 प्रोडक्शन किए, अनाजों के प्रोडक्शन के अलावा 3 प्रोडक्शन, इसकी वैल्यू समाज को करना होगा। तो 3 प्रोडक्शन क्या किए, हमने सॉइल का प्रोडक्शन किया है, ये समाज को उसकी वैल्यू समझना चाहिए, तब हमारे दाम को, हमारे माल को कैसा दाम मिले। हमने पानी का प्रोडक्शन किया है, कितना किया है, तो 50 एकड़ यानी 20 हेक्टेयर जमीन में हमने 20 करोड़ लीटर पानी ग्राउंड वाटर में डाला है। तो वो 20 करोड़ लीटर पानी कई मिनरल लेके प्योर मिनरल वाटर हो गया है। वो इस तरह से वो पानी का कीमत समाज दे पाएगा क्या, ये हमको सोचने की। तो दूसरा प्रोडक्शन किया पानी का, तीसरा इकोलॉजी का। हमारी जरूरत ही भोजन, पानी, हवा है जिंदा रहने के लिए। तो ये तीनों जरूरतों का वहां पे निर्माण करके हमने वो एग्रीकल्चर को आगे बढ़ाया। धन्यवाद।
बहुत 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 धन्यवाद। ग्रेवाल जी, हरपाल सिंह जी।
ऐसे है सुनीता जी, काफी लोग बोलने वाले हैं, मैं तो सारी उम्र ही बोलता रहा हूँ। तो
कभी भी
मेरा ये निवेदन
संक्षिप्त में ये बताएं कि जो ये रिपोर्ट है और जो इसका जो आप कैसे समझते हैं कि काम आगे बढ़ेगा।
देखिए, रिपोर्ट अच्छी आई है, बट काफी चीजें प्रॉपरली साइंटिफिक नहीं है। तो उसमें देखिए क्या है कि जब तक आप केमिकल रेजिड्यू साथ में नहीं लेके चलेंगे तो रिपोर्ट के कुछ मायने कम हो जाते हैं। भाई आपने कितना, किसी ने ये नहीं बताया कि किसने कितना कितना उसमें फर्टिलाइजर, सो कॉल्ड, आई नेवर कॉल इट ए फर्टिलाइजर, केमिकल फर्टिलाइजर को मैं बूस्टर कहता हूँ। और जो केमिकली फार्मिंग होती है उसको मैं केमिकल्चर कहता हूँ, उसको एग्रीकल्चर आप नहीं कह सकते, क्योंकि एग्री प्लस कल्चर दो चीजें मिलके एग्रीकल्चर बना है।
बहुत सुंदर। और
उसमें क्या है कि ये बताया ही नहीं गया कि भाई हमने कौन कौन सा केमिकल डाला, कितना कितना डाला, या उनको कोई यूनिफॉर्मिटी को इंस्ट्रक्शन दी गई इन अपना डिफरेंट यूनिट्स को कि आप भाई इसी फ्रेमवर्क में डालोगे। उनकी टाइप ऑफ सॉइल क्या थी वगैरह वगैरह, वो चीजें कम है।
ये सब डिटेल रिपोर्ट में है, अमित ने
मैंने देखा है, उसमें मुझे नजर नहीं आई।
तो ठीक है, इसके ऊपर चर्चा और कर लेंगे। हमारी कोशिश है कि जो भी
अच्छा, मेरे कुछ सवाल हैं। जैसे यील्ड को एक्सप्लेन नहीं किया गया, व्हाट इज यील्ड, इज इट अ ग्रॉस वेट कॉल्ड यील्ड? तो अगर जब तक आप उसके अब न्यूट्रिएंट्स नहीं लेंगे, न्यूट्रिएंट वैल्यू, और उसके अकॉर्डिंगली उसकी यील्ड को आप मेजर नहीं करेंगे तो उसका औचित्य नहीं रह जाता। ऑर्गेनिक बेसिकली हैज टू बी न्यूट्रिएंट एफिशिएंट। अब दूसरी बात है कि मेरे फार्म पे अगर किसी को एलर्जी हो किसी चीज से भी जो मैं पैदा करता हूं, मेरा खाए तो एलर्जी नहीं होती, दैट इज ऑर्गेनिक। ऑर्गेनिक नाउ इन लोगों ने उठा के लेबोरेटरी के अंदर कैद कर दिया है। तो मेरा लेक्चर तो कम से कम 1 महीने का है, मुझे यहीं बंद क्षमा दे दीजिए और लोगों को बुलवा लीजिए।
नहीं, बहुत अच्छा।
मेरे पास पॉइंट्स हैं, मैं आपको दे दूंगा।
नहीं, बिल्कुल, आपने जो कहा उसमें बहुत बहुत गहराई है। एंड इन चीजों को आई थिंक हम लोगों को सबको सोचना पड़ेगा कि हम लोग ये लेबोरेटरी के अंदर ऑर्गेनिक, नेचुरल सब शब्द बना रहे हैं। मुझसे बार बार अमित कहा जा रहा है,
मेरा एक रिक्वेस्ट आपसे है।
हाँ,
आई एम सॉरी, मैं थोड़ा सा पीछे आपसे कुछ पूछना चाह रहा। आपके जो डायरेक्टर थे जिन्होंने आपको बोला था वो ये कोका कोला और इसका करने का, उनका नाम क्या था?
वो मैं ही थी।
नहीं, आपको आपके डायरेक्टर थे ना वो मोहन
हरपाल जी का भी और कर लेंगे, मेरे पास
ठीक है। ऑल राइट, दिस इज माय क्वेश्चन, काफी दिनों से लिंगर ऑन हो रहा है।
बिल्कुल, बहुत कर लेंगे। अमित, मेरे पास बहुत रिक्वेस्ट आ रहे हैं कि अंग्रेजी में दैट आई शुड ट्रांसलेट the Hindi into English. Please forgive me, but the richness of what is said in Hindi, it is not possible to translate. And I think the speakers who are speaking are practitioners, and I think it is important that they have been able to put forward their point of view, which is really telling us that we need to be able to separate out the myths from the facts, and we need to understand a lot of what is happening from the perspective of farmers and not from the perspective of anyone else. I think that is the major message that I'm taking back, but there's a lot more. Shuvir Singh ji, Bijnor se, Shurveer Singh.
हाँ, सबको मेरा नमस्कार, सीएससी परिवार को और अपने मित्रों को सबको नमस्कार। और ये जो रिपोर्ट बनाई है इसके लिए मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा, आपको सबको बधाई। और जब मेरे मित्र श्रद्धेय त्यागी जी ने और श्री हरपाल जी ने और श्री शर्मा जी ने जो बताया वो लगभग सब कुछ आ गया। और मेरा जो अनुभव है, देखिए आपका बेनिफिट ऑफ ऑर्गेनिक और नेचुरल फार्मिंग पर। तो और ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग जो सिमिलर हरित क्रांति जैसी है, जो इनपुट्स उसमें लगते हैं, जो कुछ उसका वो उसी प्रिंसिपल पर आधारित है, ये नहीं तो। और नेचुरल फार्मिंग जो प्रोसेस है वो सिनर्जेटिक सिस्टम, उसमें मनुष्य भी आता, सारे जो नेचर की इकाई है वो भी सब सम्मिलित है, पूरे ब्रह्मांड की ऊर्जा सम्मिलित है। तो जैसे त्यागी जी ने बताया, नियम नियंत्रण और संतुलन, तो इस सिद्धांत के आधार पर प्राकृतिक खेती की व्यवस्था बनती है। और इसमें मूल आधार जो सिद्धांतिक है वो डाइवर्सिटी है, विविधता, और विविध इकाइयों के साथ परस्पर पूरकता, और पूरकता के साथ ही ये कृषि संपन्न होती है। और इसमें कोई भी चीज हानिकारक नहीं लगती। नेचर में जितना भी एग्जिस्टेंस है उसको सहस्थित बनाने की ड्यूटी जो है वो मनुष्य की। तो जो मनुष्य का जो एग्रीकल्चर सिस्टम है, जैसा श्री हरपाल जी बता रहे थे कि एग्रीकल्चर जो डिफाइन किया उन्होंने, तो वो बात सही है। ये एक सिनर्जेटिक सिस्टम है और उसमें कोई शत्रु भाव हमारे जो है ना, हमको मनुष्य की आवश्यकता, मनुष्य को केंद्रित में रखा गया अभी तक कृषि में। आज जो जरूरत है वो होल नेचर को केंद्र में रखकर, उसके सौंदर्य को केंद्र में रखकर मनुष्य अपनी आवश्यकताओं को जुटाने के जो क्रियाकलाप करेगा, वही विधा जो नेचुरल फार्मिंग है। और इसमें कोई अभी तक जो जितने मेरा वैज्ञानिकों से ये निवेदन है और जो प्रबुद्ध हमारे भाई लोग बैठे हैं कि जितनी हम मानने में ऊर्जा लगाते हैं, प्रकृति में एक ऊर्जा लगाते हैं, जुड़ तो देखिए नेचुरल फार्मिंग के जो भाई हमारे सदैव त्यागी जी ने बताया वो पूरे स्पष्ट है। और जो शर्मा जी ने जो प्रबंधन बताया, ऑर्गेनिक और नेचुरल फार्मिंग का मिश्रण जो बताया, प्रबंधन बताया, तो हमारे जो है ये एकदम प्राकृतिक रूप के जो नियम हम उसको फॉलो करते हैं। और जो ऑर्गेनिक खेती में हो उसको आर्टिफिशियल एक कृत्रिम भाव से खेती आधारित रहती, बाजार पर आधारित रही है। और ये जो इंटीग्रेटेड प्रोग्राम जो हमारे त्यागी जी ने बताया, हमें सुभाष जी ने भी बताया, हरपाल जी ने भी बताया, तो ये हमारी जो अब खेती की जो विधा है वो इंटीग्रेटेड सिस्टम में सफल होगी। और ये नहीं कि तो उसमें सारे लोग जो कृषक हो, कृषक के साथ जो ग्रामीण जीवन हो, जो ऑफिसर लोग हो, जो खेती से, बहरहाल जो मनुष्य की मूल आवश्यकता वो रोटी है। और रोटी जो है एग्रीकल्चर से मिलती है। तो जो रोटी के लिए प्रयास कर रहे हैं, तो वो प्रयास प्रकृति को केंद्र में रखते हुए जो हम देंगे, तो सारा पोषण आहार हमारा जितना भी आहार होगा वो पौष्टिक होगा, वो सिस्टमेटिक होगा। और हमारे जो प्रकृति का जो सौंदर्य गड़बड़ा गया, जो हमारे सारे रिसोर्स की क्वालिटी, रिसोर्स की जो घटनाक्रम जा रहे हैं, चाहे वो सूक्ष्म माइक्रोब्स हो, चाहे ब्रह्मांड के जो नाइट्रोजन चक्र, कार्बन चक्र, जितने भी हमारे चक्र सिस्टम है, तो ये सब हमारे गड़बड़ा रहे हैं। नेचुरल फार्मिंग करने से ये सब सिस्टमेटिक व्यवस्थित हो जाएंगे और काफी पैदावार होगी। जैसे डाइवर्सिटी के तरह तरह की मिश्रित फसलें, तरह तरह की जो उसमें कर्षण क्रियाएं हैं, वो सब प्रकृति सम्मत विज्ञान आधारित होंगी। और ये हम कर रहे हैं। अभी हमारा हल्दौर एफपीओ रजिस्टर हुआ, उसका मैं संरक्षक भी हूँ। तो उसमें हम किसानों को इसी तरह से कि अभी तक तो किसान उत्पादक था और उसको खेत की तैयारी से लगाकर आखिर मार्केटिंग तक उसको हम सपोर्ट करेंगे। अभी दूसरा कार्य एक ये भी शुरू कर दिया हम लोग।
सुरवीर जी, हाँ, थोड़ा सा संक्षिप्त
में देखिए, फलों पर, सब्जियों पर जो दैनिक आवश्यकता है हमारी, इन पर बहुत रसायन छिड़का जाता, तो उसके विकल्प में हम अपने बागों को भी जैविक बना रहे हैं। हमारे धामपुर में एक बाग है, उसका मिट्टी तैयार कर रहे हैं और सब्जियों का भी कर रहे हैं। और ये सहज, सरल, प्रकृति, अगर प्रकृति के नियमों के आधार पर चलेंगे सिस्टम, कॉम्प्लीमेंट सिस्टम सब, तो बहुत सरल है।
बहुत सुंदर। रामू, अगर मैं आपसे कहूँ, आप सब जानते हैं रामू को, ही इज द एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर ऑफ द सेंटर फॉर सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर इन तेलंगाना। इस काम में बहुत सालों से जुड़े हुए लीडर हैं। रामू।
Namaskar. Namaste, Sunita and Mith. I think it's a wonderful work done by you. A very timely report. In fact, listening to Amit, I felt this whole evidence is from the ICR, who is actually opposing the whole issue, opposing the whole change. So it shows actually issue is not about evidence. Issue is about resistance to change, and which requires a lot of engagement process. Probably we should do more engagement so that a transition is possible. And since now that there is a more political will also for a transition, at the top level change may not be very difficult. But what we need to push now is a ecological framework for the entire agriculture, not just for organic and natural farming. So even how your conventional agriculture can be measured in the same ecological terms is something which is very critical. I think that is something we need to push for. Second is, in terms of support, if the government continues to provide the same support to only rice and wheat and expect farmers to make a cropping pattern shift, if government continues to support the chemical fertilizers at the same rate and expect farmers to go organic, is not going to happen. So we need to also look at an equitable support systems and leave the choice to the farmers. I think that's a very, very critical thing which we need to look at. So probably the next analysis we should do is about what kind of support is available for each of these models, and then how that can be made equitable. I think that is something which we need to look at. And gradually, if farmers start practicing it, I think the differences of opinion will change. Otherwise, people continue to fight on over opinions rather than on the evidence. Thank you. It's a wonderful work done, and we continue to work with you.
Excellent, Ramu. Very well put, and you've hit the nail on the head. Rajendra Chaudhary ji. Rajendra ji.
Just a minute. Yeah.
हाँ. Please go ahead. हाँ.
मैं ऐसा करता हूँ. What I'll do is I had jotted down few points in English. I'll share screen on that and speak in Hindi, and that will, I think, so take care of both the.
Rajendra ji, as you can see, I'm struggling to keep time, so sure. I will just beg you to keep it short. That is all.
Sure.
But I'm listening to everyone and fascinating. So.
Sure. Just a minute. Let me. Yeah. So, my points that I had jotted down are available on screen in English, and I'll be speaking in Hindi.
Brilliant.
CSC ने जो बात कही है, उसकी मुख्य बात ये है, मैं CSC की रिपोर्ट से कोट करते हुए कह रहा हूं कि जैविक खेती के संदर्भ में, उसकी पैदावार के संदर्भ में एविडेंस उपलब्ध है। जो चीज अब तक नहीं हुई है कि इस एविडेंस नकार के सरकारों ने उस नहीं किया है, ये CSC की रिपोर्ट में कहा गया है। पर मैं इसमें एक बात जोड़ना, केवल सरकारों ने ही नहीं, जिन वैज्ञानिकों ने ये शोध किया है वो अपने आंकड़ों से निकलने वाले निष्कर्षों को नहीं अपना रहे हैं। 2016 की उनकी पॉलिसी प्रिस्क्रिप्शन क्या है, और अभी भी रवि कुमार जी ने वही कहा कि आदिवासी इलाकों के लिए, निश एरियाज के लिए, क्रॉप्स के लिए इसको बढ़ावा दिया जाए, परंतु जो फूड हब्स हैं, मतलब हरियाणा, पंजाब, वेस्टर्न, वहां के लिए ये प्रमोट, सबका अपना एविडेंस। ये मैं 2016 में उनको ये कहते, अंग्रेजी में पढ़ रहा हूं, ऑर्गेनिक बासमती राइस, राइस, मेज, ग्रीन ग्राम, चिकपी, सोयाबीन, कॉटन, गार्लिक, कॉलीफ्लावर, टोमेटो रिजल्टेड इन यील्ड एडवांटेज ऑफ 4 to 14%। 2016 में उनकी अपनी रिपोर्ट ये कह रही है, और उसके बावजूद वो मेन स्ट्रीमिंग ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर की बात नहीं कर रहे हैं, ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग की बात नहीं कर रहे हैं, वो कुछ इलाकों के लिए इसे रखना चाहते हैं। और सबसे बड़ी दिक्कत की एक शब्द, एक वाक्य नहीं लिखा, अपने एविडेंस को नकार के वो क्यों इतनी सीमित पॉलिसी प्रिस्क्रिप्शन दे रहे हैं कि सरकार नहीं कर रही है, कृषि वैज्ञानिक भी अपने शोध के आधार पे वो सब काम नहीं कर रहे हैं, जो उनका रिजल्ट आ रहा है उसको वो अडॉप्ट नहीं कर रहे हैं। और दुख की बात यह है कि 2016 के बाद आईसीआर की तरफ से, इस प्रोजेक्ट की तरफ से ऐसी कंपैरेटिव स्टेटमेंट्स नहीं आई हैं। आपको हर सेंटर की, हर क्रॉप का, हर क्रॉपिंग सेंटर का इंडिविजुअल डाटा मिल जाएगा, उसकी कोई कंसोलिडेटेड रिपोर्ट जैसे 2016 में उन्होंने दी है, उसके ये क्यों नहीं आ रहा है? कहीं जानबूझ के ये छुपाने की कोशिश तो नहीं है कि जो रिजल्ट्स बता रहे हैं वो तो ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग के पक्ष में या गैर रासायनिक खेती के पक्ष में इतनी यूपीएससी के रिजल्ट्स।
राजन जी, अगर आप अपना कैमरा ऑफ कर दें, आपकी थोड़ा सा कनेक्शन में दिक्कत आ रही है।
श्योर। बावजूद आए हैं कि इनका जो मॉडल है वो सीमित, ऑर्गेनिक की इनकी समझ सीमित है, केवल पोषण का तरीका बदल दिया। जो कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव ऑर्गेनिक है उसके हिसाब से तो इन्होंने एक्सपेरिमेंट्स किए ही नहीं है। मोनोक्रॉपिंग को मोनोक्रॉपिंग से क्रॉप टू क्रॉप कंपैरिजन किया है, और थोड़े बहुत इन्होंने इंटीग्रेटेड फार्मिंग सिस्टम्स के तहत कुछ प्रयोग किए, बहुत थोड़े हैं। उनके रिजल्ट्स अनफॉर्चुनेटली सीएससी ने हाईलाइट नहीं किए हैं। थोड़े हैं किए हैं, वो सीएससी ने हाईलाइट नहीं किए। मैं उनमें से एक रिपोर्ट को पढ़ता हूं तो कालीकट के उसमें एक साल में 1 एकड़ से 1.8 लाख एकड़ 1.8 लाख एकड़ की आमदनी हुई, नेट प्रॉफिट हुआ, और 410 दिनों का रोजगार मिला। अब यहीं पे इन्होंने वो कंपैरिजन नहीं किया कि केमिकल फार्मिंग में कितनी आय मिलती है, परंतु एक और सेंटर के आंकड़ों में ये दिया हुआ है। मैं फिर इनकी रिपोर्ट से पढ़ता हूं, इंटीग्रेटेड ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग में जो इनकम, नेट इनकम मिली इज मच हायर देन रीजन्स फार्मर्स कॉमन प्रैक्टिसेस ऑफ राइस मोनोक्रॉपिंग और इंप्रूव्ड प्रैक्टिस ऑफ राइस वेजिटेबल क्रॉपिंग सिस्टम। मतलब ये खुद स्वीकार कर रहे हैं, हालांकि कहीं कहीं टुकड़ों में कर रहे हैं, कि किसान को विस्तृत रूप से अगर हम ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग करते हैं तो बहुत ज्यादा फायदा होता है। मैं 2 मेथोडोलॉजिकल कमी का भी जिक्र कर दूं जो सीएससी की रिपोर्ट में भी हैं और इंपोर्ट में भी हैं। जब हम प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी की कैलकुलेशन करते हैं तो केवल रिसीव्ड प्राइसेस पे करते हैं, जो कि ऑर्गेनिक फार्मर वालों को आमतौर पे ज्यादा मिलती है, केमिकल वालों को कम मिलते हैं। वो भी करें, पर हम कॉमन प्राइसेस पे भी करें, ताकि ऐसा ना हो कि जो प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी है ऑर्गेनिक फॉर्म की, वो सब प्राइस प्रीमियम्स, प्रोसेसिंग और मार्केटिंग के खाते में चले जाए और यील्ड वाली चीज खत्म हो जाए। अंतिम बात मैं जो कहना चाहता हूं वो ये है कि ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग कोई एक मेथड नहीं है। ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग के अंदर भी बहुत अलग अलग किस्म के तरीके हैं। वो मोनोक्रॉपिंग भी है जो केमिकल फार्मिंग से लगभग मिलती जुलती है, केवल केमिकल्स यूज नहीं होते। और वो जैसा शूरवीर जी और बाकी लोग कह रहे हैं कि डाइवर्सिफाइड फार्मिंग भी है, सुभाष शर्मा जी कह रहे हैं, तो इन अलग अलग ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग सिस्टम्स को हमें क्लब नहीं करना चाहिए। इनके रिजल्ट्स को हम सेपरेटली ऑर्गेनाइज करें तो हम पाएंगे कि बहुत बेहतर रिजल्ट्स मिलेंगे।
बहुत अच्छा।
तो सीएससी की रिपोर्ट आने के बाद वैज्ञानिक अपने आंकड़ों को ज्यादा सीरियसली लेंगे और जनता में भी इसकी बात जाएगी। I hope those who did not follow English, did not follow Hindi, were able to read my presentation, and I would be willing to take up questions.
Thank you, Rajendra ji. That was very well done. Thank you, and thank you for being bilingual. Debal Dev ji, Debal.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Namaskar to everyone. It's a very pleasant occasion, and I really read this whole report 2 times over the last 2 days, and really, I find it extremely impressed. And I'm really impressed with this wonderful compilation of all the data, although produced by this ICAR, which, as Ramu has already mentioned, are actually not going to implement any of the recommendations and based on their own findings over the last decade. Now, I'm going to point out just a few of the shortcomings. I'm not going to repeat. I fully endorse the speech by Rajinder Chaudhary, who has actually pointed out some of the methodological shortcomings, which I'm not going to repeat here, but I will just touch upon a very major things, 2 things that we can come forward with. We appeal to all the scientists in agricultural discipline. We are all, the entire community of organic farming and agroecology community are well aware of the productivity, efficiency, and the environmental benefits coming out from organic farming. Basudha, in my own organization, we have been growing agroecological and demonstrating and teaching agroecology over the past 25 years in Basudha, and we are growing 1,425 varieties of rice and 25 other crops all together on the same farm with 0 external input, but it's a biodiverse farm. Now, this focus on biodiversity as a component of organic farming is not mentioned anywhere in this ICAR research. It's only this entirely based on the inputs, the nature of inputs, which they call as organic and organic innovative method, etc. Now, I would rather know just to share screen. Can you see this?
It's okay. We can see. We can see. Yes.
Okay. This is I find that the publications that have been referred, they're of variable credibilities. There are many kinds of many references from paid and predatory journals, international journals of agriculture, environment, biotechnology, which are of very poor scientific credibility. Then there are institutional bulletins. There are ICAR's own reports and their own bulletins, like Indian Institute of Vegetable Research Technical Bulletin. Then organizational reports like CESS and ICAR's own reports, organization reports, and then unpublished reports also, like this College Department of Economics and Roorkee BSM College, and conference proceedings. This is the major bulk of the references. Now, there are many other internationally recognized reports. I'm not focusing on I'm not only telling this the very old long-term experiments on organic farming conducted in Rothamsted in UK for 100 years. Then for 60 years, this very long-term research on organic and chemical comparative research in Cambridgeshire, and Eurosomnet project that was this is now the 15th year that's running. Those are not mentioned. Now, I understand the entire bulk of this was entirely on Indian evidence, but even with the Indian evidence, there are many very important internationally recognized reports, publications, like Yadish is an excellent report on this organic yield efficiency and the environmental benefits, and also Subehia, as more recently in 2014, published in Experimental Agriculture. These are the very solid scientific evidence recognized by international scientific community. There are at least 8 such publications which are not mentioned in this report. This is unfortunate. I'm sure that it will be corrected rather than relying on these related journals, reports, and organization bulletins and ICAR's own conference proceedings. So that's one part of it. The second one is that the data, it's not the fault of CSE, of course. It's the ICAR's own data. It shows very wide range of yield efficiency and resource inputs and financial benefits, very wide variability. And the variability is, I just put up a summary of this organic, 2 kinds of organic farming. One OF is organic farming, and this organic innovative farming that includes, includes Panchagavya and all of these. Now, you can see this now from minus 96% to plus 378% of PCB, and then this available nitrogen, potassium, and benefit cost ratio is from minus 63% to 61%, minus 55% to 60%. So this is a huge fluctuation and a huge range of differences. So it should be, I mean, this is not the task of CSE. This is not the task of the staff of Down to Earth, but it's the task of agronomists and agricultural statisticians to make sense of it. Anyone can pick up this data showing that this 70% of this, the farms are actually giving this very abysmal benefit, abysmal low benefit or negative benefits and so on and so forth, of 30% of this or 25% of this. This is juggling with numbers, and the conclusion would be very confusing, and the farmers may appreciate that maybe out of the 23% which shows negative, maybe my farm will also fall into that category. So there's no guarantee that I'll really make a good productivity, or it will really lead to kind of PSB content in my soil. So this requires a meta-analysis with all these huge number of data, huge size of data, with all that makes sense of this variability and all of this. This is the task of agricultural statistics, and right. This is very important to make a good interpretation of this. So meta-analysis is this is one. I
will ask you to please wrap up. I still have a number of speakers.
Yeah, it's the end of it.
The point you're making.
And then we have this mixed graph. This is what we know. Yes. So, and I think as Rajinder ji has already mentioned, is that it's not just the variability, but also the mixed cropping versus monoculture. Most of this is monoculture. I also found that there are also kinds of rice with many other crops like legumes and others. These are not separated. It requires that agronomists should classify the data according to sole crop versus multiple crop systems, and then interpret this data, whether it is negative or positive or whatever, minus 60% or plus 60%, then it can be classified in a more meaningful way. But this is a very good opportunity that CSE has presented with this report. This is the first time, accumulation and amassment of all this data, which is given as a gift to the statisticians who can work on it. And this actually leads to the realization of this agroecological principle, which I remember Bharat Bhushan ji has also already mentioned, that organic agriculture is here in this report. ICAR actually presents it as a profit-oriented activity. It's just like a profit-oriented, you just think of how much more profit you can earn. This is not agriculture. This is not sustainable agriculture. This also has to give a concern to the environmental benefits, the health benefits, as Bharat Bhushan ji has rightly pointed out. I think CSE should also, this report should have also emphasized that point. Just this cost benefit ratio is not just the market value based benefit, which is not, which does not include the other kinds of benefits of health and environmental dividends that organic farming gives. And as Ramu has also mentioned, that organic farming includes many other things, but does not include biodiversity per se, excepting the inputs. So it's just the non-synthetic inputs. That is organic in the strict definition. But when we talk about really, real organic in the broader sense, it must include biodiversity. It has to be biodiversity based, least external input system, and that should include multiple crops. It's
I think
not monoculture.
That point has been made. I'm going to move on. I really have a number of speakers.
This is the last point.
Yes,
thank
please.
you. I hope this
point is very, very valid.
Taken down.
Yes,
all right.
Please.
All right.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to many of these issues that have been raised. Sridhar, if I can now call upon you. Sridhar Radhakrishnan, steering member of the committee member of the Alliance for Sustainable and Holistic Agriculture. Sridhar.
Yeah, thank you, Sunita. Yes, see, let me just start off from a conflict which keeps coming up, always. I don't see the big, need to, at this point, be able to debate, the various kinds of agriculture into, what. So I mean, on one side, you call it non-chemical agriculture, and then you encompass as much as possible into that. And on the other end, probably you can take up the agroecological agriculture as somewhere that we probably want to reach. And in between, you have organic or natural or permaculture or biodiversity-based agriculture, whatever. Now, coming to this particular report, 5-6 very quick points. One, excellent and timely report. No, because obviously there are probably lots of analysis that is needed further, as Deval has pointed out, or Rajendra ji has pointed out. But then I must say that it's a shot in the arm for the organic but natural farming farmers, practitioners, and the sustainable agricultural enthusiasts like us. And especially in the time when India has seriously stepped into this policy approach, but is also slightly reluctant in doing it. Reluctant because, you know, there is always this counter thing that is happening. We are having a lot of trouble, you know, blocks from moving one to the other, as Ramu was saying about, you know, the question of change. The second point I want to make is that it is also, the timing is also great because there is a growing science and evidence globally, and FAO itself is recognizing it, that all this comes under the larger, you know, community food systems approach, where natural farming or organic farming or such kinds of integrations are highly possible. Now, these things are also being talked about in both research papers, or whether by practitioners or by, you know, through experiences. Now, the problem is that this also comes at the right time when a very bad example of implementing an organic farming or a natural farming method in Sri Lanka is being used to demolish and, you know, and tarnish or blacklist organic farming and natural farming generally. This is absolute nonsense, because from our perspective, let me tell you, we do not endorse what Sri Lanka did. That is a surgical strike that happened, and I don't think organic farming or natural farming in an already 50-60 years of chemical farming and all this non-sustainable agriculture, you suddenly bring in, and you don't do a surgical strike. You do a very, very scientific phasing in, phasing out operation. And if Sri Lanka has erred in doing that, that cannot be used as an example to tarnish organic farming. So that's my point. In that point, I think this is a very timely report, because it's a shot in the arm for all of us, where concerted research for years together is being brought into one report. The third point is for the genuinely concerned people. I mean, there are concerns obviously rising about if organic farming, what will happen, food security, etc. For genuinely concerned people, this report is a very good report, because it could probably, I mean, if they really want to seriously look at it, there is a lot of exploratory material in this book. That is what I think is important. And for those not genuinely concerned and are sort of fossilized or fanatic about the chemical form of agriculture, and I don't want to have, you know, put up names, because there are people who have already tweeted out saying, you know, natural farming is a hoax and a fraud, etc. As soon as the declaration from the budget happened, they've already started tweeting it. We had to take it on them. But for them, there is nothing that can convince them. But for those who are really convinced, this is a great document. Fourth point, never have we seen any other, you know, technology actually being, you know, so useful and potential, but being questioned on this scale. It's just being questioned all over the place. Here, I mean, look at chemicals. Look at any chemical that has been experimented and newly bought in. One small experiment, some university, it gets cleared. It gets cleared for use in that state. But at the same time, when you talk about organic farming, for 15, 20 years, people have worked on it, have demonstrated, have experiences, hundreds and thousands of them, and still you are sitting and having doubtful. Now, at least, there is even the ICR institutes which are doing it and demonstrating it. I think it's a great news. Point 5, the objections were reluctance has also deprived this nation and millions of farmers from upgrading into sustainable knowledge, skills, and returns, which I think is a very important point. It's a deprivation that the government, that India have had by not getting into the bus of organic or natural farming much earlier. They have been forced to risk their lives also in the process. And you know, by continuing this archaic systems that need to be phased out, so now we need to rigorously, you know, proceed and go ahead and support policies, support programs, support research, which will drive India into an agricultural, you know, a sustainable agriculture format. And my last point, we also, I think, need to, because this is a great start, I think we need to set up some sort of a mechanism at a national scale, and regional scales and at national scale, to do a continuous ongoing process of documenting, validating, and propagating techniques, resources on crop-specific, ecosystem-specific systems that have been developed or evolved and practiced by thousands of farmers across the country. There are hundreds and hundreds of methods that are coming up, popping up. They have sometimes been validated by time, sometimes been validated by local universities. We need to pull up those information. I mean, when we worked on the Save Our Rice campaign, for instance, we found farmers having developed terrific methodologies to actually be able to, but we do not have a repository of it. Unless the government systems don't do a repository, nobody does a repository. I think we need to have an open source repository, an inventory sort of thing, which is an ongoing documenting process in this country, so that all diverse methodologies across ecosystems is captured and is there for posterity to be using it. In that sense, I think this is a terrific start. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sridhar. Thank you so much for those very wise words. Binita Shah, founder of Super Agricultural Research Group from Uttarakhand.
Yeah, hello, good evening to CSC family and all the other panelists. I speak in both languages and I don't have a lot to say. I also feel that I don't know basically on what, which hat I have to wear and speak in this because I am a practicing farmer. मैं एक किसान भी हूँ. I run my own apple orchard, which is organic and biodynamic for the last 25 years. At the same time, I also work with the state government. मैंने state सरकार के साथ, उत्तराखंड सरकार के साथ काम किया 16 साल. Basically headed the first organic board. State was the first organization which actually brought in the organic policy for the farmers of Uttarakhand. So I have seen all sides of how to, hit your head with bureaucrats and technocrats and try to get something moving. After the war, अब मैं लगभग करीब 45,000 किसानों को लीड करती हूँ. हम 4 states में काम करते हैं. Obviously, organic agriculture, biodynamic agriculture is the systems which we promote. और हरपाल सिंह जी किसी पंचांग के बारे में बात कर रहे थे, तो we print close to 50,000 planting calendars every year, which is also up on our website. हम 4 भाषाओं में पंचांग को छापते हैं, कृषि पंचांग, which is basically based on the moon rhythms और जो solar cycle, the moon cycles and the solar rhythms of the cosmos, which is very, very scientific. And पिछले 25 सालों में जो काम हुआ है, so there's evidence of organic agriculture being successful or economically sustainable, चाहे वो एक small farmer के लिए हो, चाहे एक बड़े farmer के लिए हो. So for people like us from this community, हम लोगों के लिए कोई ऐसी कोई नई बात कभी नहीं थी. Yes, and in fact, Mr. Ramu, I think very rightly said that it, and in fact, I had the same words to say in my own time, that it was like a coup. You see, we literally, it is a coup d'etat that हमने ICR के ही results को ICR के ऊपर उड़ेला है. The fact is कि करीब 25 साल पहले जब कभी भी कोई कॉन्फ्रेंस होती थी या वर्कशॉप होता था एग्रीकल्चर पे, हमेशा अगर 20 पेपर्स पढ़े जाते थे तो उसमें से 1 या 2 पेपर ऑर्गेनिक के भी होते थे, और उनको हम जैसे लोगों को एडजस्ट किया जाता था कि चले नए कोई आए हुए हैं, इन्होंने कुछ काम किया, इनको भी बुला लो, इनको भी बुला लो, इनको भी, एंड बीइंग अ गर्ल और लेडी दे विल से अरे बेटा इनको भी, हाँ बेटा क्या बोलना है आपको, आप भी बताइए, what are your findings? Right. And the moment you start speaking something very concrete, जब भी आप कोई एक्चुअली कोई रिजल्ट या कोई रिसर्च या एक्शन रिसर्च का कोई ऐसा मुद्दा बोलने लगे जिसमें वो थोड़ा सा भी उसमें कन्विंसिंग वाली बात हो, आपको बड़े पोलाइटली और बड़े सिस्टमैटिकली आपको वहां से हटा दिया जाता था. एंड मेनी टाइम्स जब उसकी रिपोर्ट आती थी उस वर्कशॉप की, तो आप लोगों के, हम लोगों के उसमें नाम भी गायब होते थे कई बार. So I remember that the ICR, and I'm sure there must be some ICR scientists who are also here at the part of our group, has been having a very systematic, deliberate effort not to highlight the success of organic agriculture from day one. But since then, it's very nice. It's very good. Everything takes time. That now we have hundreds of scientists in various ICR institutes, जो कि जितने भी इनके नेटवर्क स्टडीज होते हैं या इनके जो भी इनके साइंटिफिक वर्क होते हैं, उसमें कई प्रकार के ऑर्गेनिक एग्रीकल्चर के रिजल्ट्स आ रहे हैं कंट्री वाइड, वेदर इन सम प्रोग्राम और द अदर. And most of these young scientists are very proud about this work. They're very passionate about this work. But yes, the question is why, in spite of all the result, and now these experiments जो CSE के माध्यम से भी collate हुए हैं. So why is the acceptance or to reflect the same, the results for a larger policy for organic agriculture, ये क्यों नहीं हो रहा है, is basically the prime question. एज अ फार्मर तो मैंने आपको कह ही दिया कि देयर इज नो वे, और ऐसी तो कोई इसमें कोई डाउटफुल या कोई डाउट वाली बात ही नहीं है that organic is in any way not sustainable, or it should not be brought in ahead. In fact, there are so many young people in my office. In what I do, I'm all the time meeting young people, especially जो ये IT sector and other sectors. और कोविड एक नया टाइप का एक बिहेवियर सामने देखा है. काफी सारे यंग लोग इस वक्त अपनी अच्छी नौकरियां छोड़ के हमारे उत्तराखंड, कहीं पे हिमाचल, कहीं पे शहरों से दूर अब खेती करना चाहते हैं. They want to have a new kind of a livelihood which is based on farming or organic agriculture. Sorry.
If I may interrupt you, I still have a number of speakers, and I think the point that you made. So
I am just trying to put in the point of this new generation of thought of organic agriculture puts forward, the real need to perhaps articulate our system. As far as this whole report is concerned, I have 2 points in this. One, the varietal or the varieties of the seeds have not been pinpointed, which I think is somewhere is technical in nature. Perhaps, like for example, you've written basmati. Now in basmati, we have the hybrid basmatis, we have traditional varieties. So when the yield comes,
Vinita, good point. I think Amit will note it and discuss it in future reports.
The second thing which I'm trying to say is that in the NMSA, the organic agriculture, or rather the PKVY scheme, is a part of the National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture. But when we see that in PKVY, a lot of effort has gone because of the hype organic has been created. But the NMSA subsets was also about soil health, was all about a lot of other works of sustainable agriculture, wo baat reh gayi hai. What I am trying to say is that if you somehow look at the lens of organic and sort of relieve ourselves from the lens of organic agriculture and look at it in a more holistic manner, like Mr. Ram had said, the second point, which he also said, but I also felt the same thing, was the ecological framework of the whole thing. So I feel that all of this is very, very, sort of intertwined with each other. Why I say this is because you're talking about organic carbon, for example, the depletion of organic carbon. And when we say that organic farming se carbon hamara increase hota hai. But now when you also look that there is already an existing scheme.
Vinita, I really have to interrupt you. I'm struggling. You have to understand. I still have 5 more speakers.
All right, fine.
You made your point. And I think every one of us has so many interesting points to make, but
I'm going to end by saying.
I will interrupt you now.
If I can
ask the
next last point.
Yes.
By adding that in the livelihood, the results of the livelihood aspect of this whole report, the income generation of the livelihood. Yeah. I think this would be a little incomplete without having to actually go to small farmers who are practicing organic. Because I don't think this could be complete.
Vinita, that's not the purpose. The purpose of this report was to compile available information on the science, but clearly we can do much more, and we will keep doing much more. Right now, there's a very limited purpose of this report.
So I think in the next generation, you can actually reach out to certain practicing farmers.
We will do that. We will do that.
Part, and that is what I saw.
We will do that.
Thank you very much.
I will now, and I'm sorry, people, as you can see, my voice is getting more anxious because I'm really running out of time now. And I want to make sure I will listen to everybody's voice. So Matthew, I will come to you next.
Yeah.
Matthew,
I will keep it very short, Sunita.
Yes,
I promise to you. So there have been many who have already gone in front and they have spoken brilliant points. So I would just like to, support those points, but I have 2 more to add. I think for the first time in our country, we have something that we can put out in the public domain, which is of a nature that is able to convince people that organic farming is not a niche space. You know, most of the time the questions that come are, can organic farming feed the world? And here is something now from our own government, from our own scientists, something that is put out there, and to be able to take that and put it out to policymakers. And I think that's a very important thing, because we've heard of many institutes all over the world who have brilliant data which goes back 50 years, 60 years. And here is something which is from our own country, in our own context, in our own environment, we have something that we can put forward. The second thing that I wanted to say is, and it is not to talk about organic farming per se, but to state that if we as customers do not react to this, and we do not change our consumption habits, a lot of the pressure that we put on farmers to be able to produce, and we get into debates about all of that, that has to change only when we as customers start changing our consumption habits. When we demand, most of the time we are demanding cheap organic food, which is comparable to the food that we find out in the market. And to that extent, we are not willing to pay the true cost of food. And I think it's important that we as customers are willing to pay the true cost of the effort that goes in to producing this food, and have that. And that is not only a push, but also a pull that will encourage many farmers to produce more and more organic food. And those are 2 points that I would like to put
Thank
forward.
you, Matthew. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. Samir Bordoloy. Yes. Samir is the founder of the Society for Promotion of Rural Economy and Agricultural Development in the Northeast.
Yeah. Hi, Sunita.
Hi, Samir.
Yeah, thank you for giving this beautiful opportunity to hear to so many esteemed speakers who actually practice this. And then I congratulate you on this very timely publication of the report, because what I feel also when now people are like after I'm also as a farmer, sometimes I'm very confused about like so many names going on, like earlier speakers also talking about. Plus also now the university is also planning to introduce natural farming to the curriculum, which has been talked from yesterday. I think this is a very timely thing which you are doing. About Northeast, I think whenever the studies or any kind of policies being framed out, I think it's very important to look at this region also, which is somehow very different in the whole topographical aspect. And then also on when you talk about how we do better with this whole form of like how we go with nature. I myself practiced natural farming practices. I don't know how to tell it, because my agricultural degree in the university, I studied something very different, organic farming, or it was more conventional farming. Working with the government department, I had to do target of fulfilling the chemical fertilizers and also promoting organic farming at the same time. And then again, when I became a farmer living all, going to the south, the way of organic farming is different. Going to north to study or learn about organic, then again it is becoming different. Names have so many names, and it was I felt that it is a race of proving ourselves. Okay, this is my way of doing it. This is my way of doing it. This is, but what I feel is now stuck up to the jungle, living in the jungle and creating a food forest, cultivating all our local food wisdom which we have, all the crops which are local inside the forest. I feel there is a big book called nature, and it is so it is something which we have to look after, that it is not similar everywhere. So everything which we have to do has to be something which is adaptive, and more importantly, as Bharat Bhusanji told, it has to be absorbed by farmers. Even we have to absorb it. Agri plus culture, I agree. These are the two terms for agriculture. One is soil and culture. That makes our beautiful villages, our beautiful farms. And the youths in the villages has to be someone who has to take forward. What I feel now is like 15 years of whole creating this food forest where we grow food inside the forest, we coexist together. I have wild elephants and wild boars and leopards inside the forest living together, and we grow food together. I have seen the elephants coming at night and eating the tender part of bamboos we grow. but they make us accessible to the tender leaves, which we can make it to a very low volume and high value herbal tea product, which is more productive. But if I go to the university or the research as a farmer, I'll find that, okay, for Northeast, okay, you have to grow pineapples, you have to grow all crops, also stereotype, okay, these are going to be the organic products, which are sometimes very high volume, and it's very difficult to, but it's not only the quality, it has to be, it is not only the quantity, it has to be the quality, which I think it has to be looked upon that many places we have so many beautiful things happening. It's not only benefiting me or the human beings, it is all like how we coexist. I told you about the elephants. I told you about the boars coming and eating up our yams, which we grow inside the forest. But they leave the leaves, which leaves can be made into a dried product, and it is so high value product for the farmers. Tourism coming, again, when you create a farm like this, the tourism comes, the livelihood supports. So what I want to point out here is, I think this is a very good time when you have started more studies, and it has to be more multi-locational, and it has to be made something which is based on the practice which the farmers in different places can follow. So I think I congratulate you once again, and I have been in a journey of who will do it is also something very important, because I told you that soil plus culture, agriculture, and that makes village. But after so much of pumping in money in so much of agricultural technologies, from conventional to organic to zero budget natural farming to natural farming, still we find that our youths leave the villages and they migrate out of agriculture. So how we keep them there, I think introduction and keeping them. My Green Commandos concept, where I bring the youths to the farm and make them learn all those things by doing it. I find the whole whatever to absorb, we the grown-ups we found difficult. My seniors in the university, I'll do it fast. Seniors in the universities, they find it very difficult to absorb that, okay, nature way also we can grow food. But if I talk about the young people I interact, they are molting like the snakes change the skin. They are so absorbed to do it, and they do it properly. So we need a very proper framework of guiding them so that we don't confuse them. Sometimes many agricultural students come to me and they work with me and they say, he said, the book's still like this. We went to this farmer in this place of the country and he told us like this. So it is so confusing. So I think a very proper framework to guide the whole country towards a very nature friendly and to develop an economy of permanence. I think this is a very good step which you have taken, and I think this also getting people together like this in this session is also something which I have to congratulate. Thank you.
Thank you, Sameer. Very well put. Sultan Ismail. He's the Managing Director of Ecoscience Research Foundation based in
basically
Chennai.
A teacher.
Sultanji.
Basically a teacher, and I would just like to communicate a few points urgently. One thing is, as rightly pointed out by some of my friends over here, let us not go into the intricacies of organic, biodiverse, this, that farming. Let us concentrate on non-chemical farming, and thanks to the team which has developed this report, and congratulations. But Amitji, one thing you are very often using the word significantly. Unless you apply statistics, you are not supposed to use that word. Please avoid it in a report, because they will ask you in what terms it is significant, in what degrees it is significant. So that word alone, please see to it that you are careful when you use it in a presentation, especially in the presence of scientists. Right? And most important thing, I would appreciate if we can go ahead and Sunita, if you can involve into it. All nutrients have depleted in the soil, which is reflected in the crops today. And rice, there is not enough nutrients in the rice or the main crops. So the government is planning for fortification of harvested food, which is going to be a disaster. There is no proven evidence that iron can be absorbed through all those sources. And already in PDS systems in Tamil Nadu, iron has been used as a fortifying agent for rice. So it is time that how this organic food also go into the analysis of the components of biochemical components, as well as some essential element components of the harvested food. Because we all know what happens in the soil when we use organic inputs. I have done a lot of work over years. I started this research in '78. So, we all know that, but this is very important at this point of time. Second, we have to concentrate on the soil organic matter and soil faunal component. Don't forget that vermicompost cannot replace local earthworms. So I have been working with earthworms since 1978. So they cannot contribute completely. And then I am now with the State Planning Commission. And I was put in charge to draft some of the reports for agriculture. And what we have suggested is by 2040, Tamil Nadu should be organic. By 2040, this is the sort of a margin we have given. And what we are trying to tell them is that we will not make use of very sophisticated universities and higher education centers as training centers, but identify organic farmers who will function as nodal centers. And they would, under the auspices of the government support, conduct workshops which will reach the people. So it would be a sort of a horizontal transfer of information and not vertical, which can also be thought about. And one more step we have gone ahead. You would have heard, all of us would have heard about Nammalwar, a good friend of mine who is no more, who worked with the organic farming movement in Tamil Nadu. And at his place, we have started a multiversity where we'll be training people hands-on on all sorts of non-chemical inputs. So such centers, if we can develop in various localities and empower them with all the information, knowledge, and notes with all this wonderful team which is here, if they can contribute to that, that would be a basic sentence from which we will be able to go. One important another thing is, I slightly beg to disagree with Samir, because we have so many ecosystems in our country that one single way of working will not work out. Each ecosystem will have ecotypes and each one will have a different types of things which would be there. And बस यही है, जब तक मिट्टी का ख्याल नहीं करेंगे आपका अनाज कुछ नहीं होने वाला. तो मिट्टी बस यही कहती है हमें देख के, मिट्टी बस यही कहती है हमें देख के, कोई एहसान ना करो मुझ पे तो एहसान होगा, कोई एहसान ना करो मुझ पे तो एहसान होगा, करना ही हो एहसान तो मुझे जीने दो. Thank you.
बहुत सुंदर, wonderful. Very, very nice. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you, Ismail ji. Vishalakshi Padmanabhan, she's the Executive Director of the Participatory Guarantee System, Organic Council of Karnataka. Vishalakshi?
Yes. Am I visible, audible?
Yes, you're very visible and audible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I'll quickly finish. I will first maybe just share my feelings when I read the report, apart from, of course, the elated feeling of getting the first copy to go through. I think as people who have focused on where most of our time is spent on certification, but then we know that we have worked on various components of agriculture, from what happens on farm to what happens in the markets in terms of organic food. One is, it was extremely refreshing to see that the data compiled kind of validates our experiences of the last 15-20 years that we have been working on developing processes or systems which also add a bit of data, but more of stories for us to say, for us to have put together as a system. And one thing is, yes, this report definitely is extremely important for us and validates most of our experiences, is what I would say. And I think very typically, because I am no expert at reading data or analyzing data or understanding whether it is right or wrong, but what actually was very curious for me to understand the findings and the recommendations that we are coming to based on this data. And some of it really caught my eye, and one's particularly where it says that marginal farmers are likely to have a better sustainable livelihood through organic farming, is something that PGS systems, ideally in its original form, in the way that we envision PGS or we look at PGS, has validated that it's if the interventions are local and if the interventions are sustainable from multiple perspectives, small and marginal farmers actually largely benefit from adopting organic or better practices than taking up to chemical practices. So I think, so I'm sure the data which is leading to this finding is like brilliant, excellent, and validates, again, largely validates what we have been doing. And also, I think one or two areas where I would like to add to in terms of the findings, because I think the uber goal of all of our work, be it at civil society agencies or as advocacy agencies, is to make sure that we have a larger adaptation of organic farming, food, I mean, anything at various levels of governance, various levels of usage practices. So I think there is one element that we should remember when we start our dialogues on a basis where we say that the adoption of organic farming so far has been only 2% or 2.5%. So I think what is important to understand here is the agroecological movement or organic movement is more a social movement. The movement till date has not really focused on delivering practices or delivering solutions, but rather in creating conducive ecosystem. And if there are grassroots organizations which have worked with communities, I can vouch for it because we have 22 member organizations. I'm sure 80 to 90% of their time, efforts, energy, everything is spent on creating these ecosystems in which the farmers can choose their practices, adopt their ways of doing farming and thrive. And while we talk about this larger ecosystem, it includes a lot of things. It includes a lot of angles to it. And another last aspect that I would like to close this with, I think when we talk about policy intervention at this phase, it is very important to critically look at the biotechnology industry, which permeates right through the food value chain, the food systems, right from inputs, seeds, soil, to the fortification of food. I think biotechnology as an industry is all permeating through the food system. And if our policies, if our organic farming, mainstreaming policies are going to focus only on the agriculture side of it and not going to look at the biotech industry critically, especially at critical points, the interventions and the influence that this industry can have, I think we are on a losing ground in terms of mainstreaming organic.
Very important.
Thank you so much for the report and thanks for this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very well put the points, and we will come back to it at the end. Sabyasachi Roy is the Senior Manager at the National Dairy Development Board based in West Bengal. Sabyasachi.
Namaste, Sunita ji. Thank you so much for inviting me from National Dairy Development Board. This is a fantastic job that has been done by CSE, and this is so important because it has collected the ICR's information and compiled it, analyzed it, and put together. This gives a lot of hope to the entire support group for organic. I just want to add an example over here about one of NDDB's work about Sundarban Dairy Cooperative. And we started with dairy. We start with milk production and then to organic. And the farmers came to us. It's an all-women cooperative. All the members are women. And they came to us saying that if we have to, when we are going to do organic for the dairy, why not also you convert and start procuring the agricultural crops. So the indigenous crops they grow, and they came forward saying, so there are almost 4,500 farmers, all women farmers. It was so interesting. And the conversion started, and today it's an organic cooperative, organic dairy cooperative, which also does rice, the moong dal. It's an indigenous moong dal. They also do eggs, organically produced, honey, and that too, it's wild honey of the Sundarbans. It's quite popular, and COVID actually helped to increase in demand. Now, when I say demand, it's very important. What we felt was that the entire value chain also comprises of the demand pool, which also Matthew mentioned. And if there is demand, anything and everything is possible. And I hope that the future study and a commendable study that you have done, and this is added on with the entire this scope of the supply and the demand and the soil. Ismail ji, so many thanks to you for this beautiful study of mitti se barkar kuch nahi. And madam, I think the dairy se बहुत ज्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट है, डेयरी बहुत ज्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट है अगर हमको एग्रीकल्चरल वैल्यू चेन को सक्सेसफुल करना है। हमको सारी चीजों को जोड़ के देखना चाहिए, मिट्टी, डेयरी, एग्रीकल्चर, यही हमारी देश की खूबसूरती थी और ये एक साथ चलता आया है। And even when Vinita talks about the biodynamic, it also takes in account not only the cosmos, but also the cow and its horn. So we have to put things together for the future. And when in the chapter 10, you talk of way ahead, hopefully now, because of this beautiful evidence-based compilation, this
सब्यसाची आपकी आवाज चली गई, आप म्यूट पे हैं एकदम से.
Hello, can you hear me?
हाँ, last point. हाँ, बिल्कुल.
I'm sorry.
The last point. हाँ.
Yeah. I just hope that because of this beautiful compilation, and that too from the ICAR, this is also included in the NCERT's, syllabus for the school students. The students who are in the schools, maybe probably in the 10 years time, this young boys also learn about this organic natural farming. This, and then every college student who is going for agriculture studies should be taught about natural farming, organic agriculture. One good thing happened yesterday in the budget, of course, that it would be included. Hope this also becomes a good document for that. And I just suppose that school students are also even taught. Interestingly, we are trying to build a farmer level micro training center where the farmers would be teaching the other farmers about organic farming, natural farming, and we are trying to include the kids also of the farm families. We are talking of training the farm families instead of only a single farmer. The entire family should be taught, Then what happens is that movement grows. Everybody talks of the basic sense of हम natural, हम प्रकृति से जन्मे हैं. भारत भूषण जी की बातें से प्रकृति को हम नहीं तैयार कर सकते, प्रकृति हमें तैयार करती है. हमको एक साथ रहना है. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting. And this is a wonderful thing been done by your team. I congratulate you, and we look forward to many more things coming up.
Thank you, Sachi. Thank you. So thank you, everybody. And I'm sorry if I was short with a few speakers and with some of you, but I was very, I had to make sure everybody, the last speaker, in this case, Sabyasachi ji, got time before 5 o'clock, because many of the speakers had already made commitments after 5. So I had to make sure I could squeeze everybody in and hear everybody's voice. And I think what we have heard today has been spectacular. Every voice has been from practice. It comes from passion. It comes from commitment, and it comes from the knowledge to help us to understand the way ahead. And I think that's really what I really value of today. Before I wrap up, I'm going to ask Amit. Amit, you had a few comments that you would like to make to the issues that were raised. And then I will, if you give me 5 minutes, I will wrap up. We will just be over time by about 5 minutes.
एक पॉइंट रखना है जरूरी.
हाँ हरपाल जी बताएं.
बहुत ज्यादा है, पर एक बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है, वो मैं सारे ग्रुप को बताना चाह रहा कि फूड अमेंडमेंट बिल आया था 2011 में.
अच्छा, बोले हरपाल जी, मैं थोड़ा समेट.
फूड अमेंडमेंट अभी तक लागू नहीं हुआ है. If we are implement that food amendment bill, it will be very easy to shift over to organic.
ठीक.
Nobody knows. I asked each and every person. Nobody knows about it.
Okay. अगर आपके पास वो बिल की कॉपी है, वैसे हम लोग भी
आप नेट पे जाइए ना, आजकल तो सब कुछ नेट पे. थैंक्स टू.
ठीक है, हम लोग ढूंढ लेंगे. मैं अमित से कहती हूँ, अभी से कहती हूँ,
उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करवाइए. बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है. Otherwise, I'm writing all those points and sending you.
कर सकते हैं उसका. ठीक है.
Thank you.
बहुत सही.
Thanks a lot.
No, thank you, Harpal ji. I think that's a very good suggestion, and we will definitely, I think everyone, there are many more influential and powerful people in this group. So I think Harpal ji's words, please see how you can get this implemented. We from ourselves will definitely take it, read it, and see what we can do with it. Amit, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much for all the feedback, the encouraging words, and also the words which clearly would help us improve our future work. We gracefully accept all the feedback, and I can assure you that we'll try our best in future. Just 2 clarifications I want to make. There was this point about significantly higher. So we have very clearly mentioned there was no way we could have distinguished 1% increase versus an increase of 100% versus an increase of 20% because the variation was quite a lot. We took some understanding, some informed judgment, and we said it should be anything which is higher than 20%. We called it significantly higher. And that is all across in the report. It is very clearly mentioned. In the presentation also, it was just mentioned the first or second slide, perhaps. Maybe I deliberately tried to not again put many words, but it is very clearly defined, at least from our side. Some may agree, some may disagree, but we tried to be very transparent with that. And that's greater than 20% increase from the corresponding figures with inorganic is what we have called significantly higher. That's one. A second point that was raised about the wide variation, the wide spectrum of the range. I would just like to clarify here that yes, it is the case, and it is exactly based on the data that was there in the network project. But part of it is very inherently, it's inherent in the way it is being captured, because it is about different cropping systems and different crops. It is not about one crop in a particular system where we are saying is grown in different settings. So we have actually not really emphasized too much on the range. Therefore, it was just put as part of the information. We also were hopeful that it will bring some light to it. So I hope with that it helps some.
Devilji, I will not give you time right now. Tomorrow is a whole afternoon session to discuss this in greater detail. Please forgive me. I've really run out of time. I have a number of people who have. Yes, Deval. Deval, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही. आप mute पे हैं.
I'm not going to discuss anything. I just wanted to point out that it was not my critique to show this variability of the data.
I understand.
That should not be misunderstood.
No, we
I just say that no, the academics should take advantage of the wonderful data that you have put up.
No, we understand. Amit was just trying to be extra careful. I just think all this discussion should happen tomorrow when there is a whole session to discuss these issues. Today was a session really to celebrate that moment, to just say that this study, that there is evidence, and the evidence is not just with us, but the evidence actually has come from ICR and an institute of ICR, plus a compilation of evidence from other studies is showing us very clearly that the trend is that there should be no argument towards what is the advantages of organic, non-chemical, natural farming. And I think that is really the singular purpose with which we have taken this on. I just want, before I end, there is a very interesting, Komu Nagaya has put some very interesting issues. I'm not sure where Komu is from, but Komu has, I would ask Sabyasachi ji to particularly read this, and also if you can share your numbers, your name with Komu. Komu, I think, is from Andhra Pradesh, and he is talking about many of the issues that I think we really want to highlight and we all believe in very strongly. I just want to end this webinar because we have run out of time, and I don't even have, I think the effort of today was very limited, but very big. We started this, and this work, please understand, has taken Amit and his colleagues about 8 to 9 months, because the data, and I'm sorry that the data was so difficult to understand and to standardize. And that is why we are often losing the argument on why. We all know what we believe in. We all see it. Many of the farmers for whom this data is presented have very correctly said, इसमें नई बात है क्या? हम सब जानते हैं, हमने देखा है, हमारी अपनी दुनिया में हम देख रहे हैं कि प्रोडक्टिविटी बढ़ती है. हम देख रहे हैं कि अगर आप होलिस्टिक नेचर से काम करें, अगर आप सॉइल हेल्थ की बात करें, अगर आप बायोडाइवर्सिटी की बात करें, तो उन सब चीजों में this food system is a far more advantageous food system. So the voice is coming from ground up. But the fact is that this system is not taking root at the scale it needs to take root because of the resistance. And as Ramu and Sridhar said very clearly, that it is the idea that has to grow further. And the idea has to grow against the resistance that exists within the formal, scientific, conventional systems of our world. And the effort that we have made, and I'm glad that all of you have found it useful and that you have you are supporting, that we have the support of this community, is to try and just put together the available information, not for lay people, not for people like me, not for farmers, but as a way to be able to understand the information that exists, so that it is, the arguments are strong, and we don't have to keep being faced with the question that अगर आप ऑर्गेनिक करेंगे तो फिर तो इस देश के अंदर भुखमरी हो जाएगी, आप क्या प्रोडक्शन की बात करती हैं, प्रोडक्शन तो हो ही नहीं पाएगी at this scale. I think the idea very clearly, and this is not the end, this has to be the beginning of the work that we do, because this is very clear, and this is something CSC has seen in all the work we have done, in the work we've done on pesticides, in the work we do on junk food, on the work that we do on diesel vehicles, on the work that we do on sewage management. In all cases, it is a fight over ideas. It is a fight for the mind space of people, so that they can understand why the unconventional is actually the way for the future. And I think that's what our effort in this is. So I really am very grateful to all of you for sparing the time. We have spent 2 hours together, and I feel that we have heard everybody, and we were able to hear such extraordinary wisdom and voices from different perspectives, different regions of India, and that brought this together. For me, the message to my team, and I hope we have your support, would be, and in this, the work that the Institute has done is very important, is to make sure now that we can actually talk to scientists, and we can make sure that we can have a dialogue between the practitioners and the scientists, because it is critical that we have to be able to take this knowledge. And Ravi Shankar ji, your work is going to be very important in this, to take this to the formal systems of ICR. We will be writing letters to the DG ICR, we will be writing letters to all the people, sending them the report and saying very clearly that this report is got data from an ICR center whose findings have to be broadcasted, people have to stand behind it, and we need much more research on these issues from the centers, so that we can take this and make this, as all of us believe, a mass movement. So thank you very much for joining us. We are over time, but I'm really grateful to so many people who have stayed behind to listen. And thank you so much for sharing all your words of wisdom. Amit, tomorrow you have a meeting. Can you tell everybody about the meeting tomorrow? Because it would be nice if people would join and you can take this dialogue further.
Yes, so tomorrow's meeting is at the same time. It's 3 to 5 p.m. Many of you have already confirmed, but those who wish to join, kindly do so. Let us know and we will share the link. We will have a lot of people from the state and the central government. It will be more detailed discussion, most essentially around how we now take it further. What should be the transition? What should be the steps and measures taken by adopted by the central government as well as the state governments? So we look forward to your support.
And we will be doing further work this month coming forward. So we look forward to continued engagement. Our effort will be to keep pushing, it's about making sure that crack becomes wider and wider and wider. And we can make sure that we all succeed and we all prevail. And that is really what we are all in for. And I can see Sridhar smiling. He and I go back a very long time, and we know exactly what we are talking about. So thank you everyone for joining us. Harpalji, last word to Sridhar and to you.
We should have really started this session with thinking about those endosulfan victims, with which, I mean, we all work together. My God, those were days. Thanks.
Sridhar, we are still fighting that case. I went to Mumbai last week because Mr. Raju Shroff is still got a criminal. He withdrew the criminal case, but he has a civil case against us. And he's now got a case in Gujarat against us. He's got a case in Valsad against us. As you know, the endosulfan has a case really hit the chemical industry. And it's fascinating for me today that Bayer has announced that they are now going to produce organic food. And I think that's really the tragedy that we're talking about.
Let's hope. Big hug
so
for
I
you
think
for
that's really where we are. But yes, that's very important. Harpalji, last word to you, and then I'm wrapping.
I just want to communicate with you, and just give me the numbers. बाकी मैं आपके वो डायरेक्टर जी का नाम जानना चाह रहा हूँ. तो जिन्होंने आपको ये टेस्टिंग पे लगाया था अपना बिस्लेरी और ये
देखिए हरपाल जी, इसमें खाली 2 लोग हैं. एक डायरेक्टर सीएससी के थे अनिल अग्रवाल जी, जो 2001 तक हमारे साथ थे, और उसके बाद मैं हूँ. तो इसके बारे में हम लोग कभी और बात. हरपाल जी, I really need to close. We will do this offline between you and me. And there is Amit. They will explain.
अमित जी, मुझे नंबर दे दीजिएगा इनका. Okay, I'll send you all the questions.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, आप अमित जी से संपर्क करिएगा.
हाँ जी,
सभी को नमस्कार.
बहुत
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
धन्यवाद. Thank you.
Thanks everybody.